In the first season of Yellowjackets, you get introduced to the New Jersey high school state champion girls soccer team. On their way to nationals, their plane went down, and it got real sketchy out there for about 2 years. I'm talking cannibalism, murder, all the stuff that would probably make for a really good television show one day. The team featured some best friends, like Jackie and Shauna. They're both planning on going to Rutgers and rooming with each other the next year. But Jackie does not want to go a virgin, so she decided that she's going to lose her virginity to her longtime boyfriend, Jeff. When Shauna hears about this, she asks Jackie, "Are you sure he's a virgin? You guys did break up like 1,000,000,000 times." But Jackie's really positive about that. But back to the actual soccer, Jackie is a team captain. As the coach tells her, it's not because you're our best player, it's because the girls follow you. The best player is probably Thaisa, who is also the most intense. They have a freshman on the team named Allie, and Allie didn't do so well in the game that got them to nationals. Because of that, Thaisa wants to ice her out. Most of the girls seem okay with this. The one that doesn't, however, and is completely against it, is Natalie. Natalie is the outcast of the group, the rebel, punk rocker, drinks during the day, smokes cigarettes, but she's also staunch in her beliefs, and she does not believe that they should ice out one of their own. Another person that's pretty against it is Lottie, and she has some sort of medical condition where she has to take pills every day for it. Also on the team, you have Laura Lee, who is a hardcore Christian, holy roller, prays before everything. Vanessa, the team goalie, and then the team manager is Misty. In order to get ready for states, they scrimmage the JV squad, but Thaisa wants to send Allie a message. She actually switches sides so she can guard Allie. But they won't have to worry about Allie not getting the ball because as she's coming down, Thaisa hits her with a slide tackle and breaks her leg. And it's bad. It's a compound fracture. Most of the girls are pretty shaken up by this. They also wonder if Thaisa did it on purpose. Even though these guys are state champs, there is drama with them. The day before they're supposed to fly out for nationals, they all get together in the woods and have a kegger. There's smoking, there's drinking, and with Natalie, there's also drug use. So move over, Euphoria, because this is the new glimpse behind the curtain of what teens do. Anyway, the party rages on, and the more alcohol these kids get in them, the more ballsy they get. Shauna gets pretty liquored up, and that's when she approaches Thaisa, confronting her about the fact that Shauna believes she did what she did to Allie on purpose. It causes a pretty big fight with the team in the middle of this party to the point where Jackie has to pull them all aside and get it together. Now, keep in mind, Jackie has no idea about the plan to ice out Allie, so she's very confused by this infighting, and she has to remind the group, we're about to go to nationals. They still don't seem receptive, though, so she goes around the group, and she says one nice thing about everybody, and by the end of it, they're all friends again. Shauna even apologizes to Thaisa, and Thaisa says, look, I didn't mean to hurt her. But seriously, one person that is not going to remember this is Natalie, who is tripping balls. When the party wraps up, Jeff ends up driving Shauna and Jackie home. He drops his girlfriend, Jackie, off first because her parents are a little more strict than Shauna's. But as he's driving Shauna home, Shauna tells him, pull over. And that's when they start making out. He stops her and says, I thought we weren't going to do this again. And she says, we're not doing it again. But then she continues to make out with him, eventually just full-blown having sex with him in the car. She does stop midway, though, and say, okay, after this, we're done. But during the process, she does tell Jeff, tell me you love me. I'm not going to hold you to it. And he does that. The next day, the girls get together and take off in a private plane for nationals, paid for by Lottie's father. Fortunately, though, that plane ends up going down. Fast forward to present day where we find out a couple of them did survive, like Natalie, for example. She's fresh out of rehab and doesn't seem like it's her first rehab. As soon as she's discharged, she gets a red-eye flight home back to New Jersey and goes to a storage unit. In the storage unit, she has a really nice car, and in the trunk of that car is a hunting rifle. It's been so long since she's been in this storage unit that the manager of the place actually makes it a point to stop on over and see who owns it because of the fact that he's never actually seen the person. Natalie, though, isn't in the chit-chat kind of mood, and she just takes off. Mindy also survived. She's working as a nurse in a retirement community, although she seems more like the female version of Ben Stiller's character in Happy Gilmore. She puts on a smile, but she's not one to be trifled with. Thaisa not only survived, she's thriving. She's running for state senate of New Jersey. Thaisa is married to a woman named Simone, and they even have a son named Sammy. And then the last person that we have confirmed that survived is Shauna. Well, Shauna lied to Jeff. She did hold him to it. She ended up marrying the guy. But present day Shauna, her life's kind of complicated. Like, for example, she lies in her daughter's bed and jerks off to pictures of her boyfriend. So sorry, Jeff, you're not doing it for her anymore. She does have a confrontational side to her, though. Like when a reporter named Jessica Roberts comes to her house from the New Jersey Star-Ledger and wants to do a piece about what happened to the girls out in the wilderness. Shauna does not talk to reporters, though, and tells her to go F off. But Jessica is able to kind of weasel her way into the house and plead her case a little bit. She does the whole reporter angle of, oh, let's have you tell your side of the story. Everyone else has told your side of the story, but you haven't yet. When Shauna still says no, Jessica tries the other approach, telling her that her teammates are talking. But Jessica doesn't believe that. The most that Shauna will give her is everything that everybody already knows. Plane crashed, her friends died, the rest of them scavenged for 19 months until they were finally found. Jessica, however, thinks there's way more to the story than that. She alludes to a magazine that has a wedding on the cover of it, but we're not able to see who exactly it is. Shauna tells Jessica that she hasn't talked to any of the girls in years. She doesn't even know how to get in touch with them. She wishes them the best, but she's moved on. Jessica then tells her that if she tells her story, she could get her a lucrative book deal, but for the fourth time, Shauna says no. And when Jessica says, I'm sure this isn't how you thought your life was going to turn out, Shauna gets real pissed off, cursing her out and kicking her out of her house, but not before Jessica drops her card off. After Jessica leaves, Shauna continues to do normal housewife things like ironing, cooking dinner, and even though she told Jessica that she hasn't talked to the girls in years, it's not like they're far away. She sees a commercial for Thais's Senate campaign on her television. Later that night, Shauna's daughter Callie comes home, and Shauna kind of proposes that they have a girls' night because Jeff is working late. She thinks maybe they could have some dinner, watch movies together, but Callie's not into that. She has plans with her boyfriend, the same boyfriend that Shauna would like to have plans with, if you know what I mean. They appear to have a pretty normal relationship of a mother and teenage daughter, where the teenage daughter kind of takes shots at how pathetic she figures her mom's life is. Her mom, the whole while, just wanting to hang out and bond with her. The teen angst is very real. With the house to herself, she doesn't really have anything to do. She hears something in her garden, so she goes outside to see her rabbit. A normal human being would shoo the rabbit away. Shauna ends up killing it with a shovel. This is not the first time Shauna has killed an animal, that's for sure. She then walks back into the house, goes into a closet, and finds a safe. And when she unlocks it, she pulls out a bunch of journals. But tucked inside the journals is a card. And that card is for Thaisa. She calls her up and says, we need to talk. The two end up going to meet at a diner. Shauna tells Thaisa about Jessica, but the weird thing is when Shauna Googled Jessica's name, her name didn't pop up in any byline, so she doesn't believe that she actually works for the Star-Ledger. Thaisa reminds her that these people pop out of the woodwork every now and then, anniversary or two. It's nothing out of the norm. But Shauna shoots back, I can think of a few reasons this is a little bit different. We all agreed, say no more than we have to and stay out of the public eye. She pushes the card over to Thaisa and says, take care of it. Because Shauna's pretty convinced that Thaisa running for senator is the reason why Jessica is poking around about the story. Shauna then asks if Thaisa's heard from Natalie, and Thaisa confirms that Natalie just got out of rehab. But when Shauna asks about the rest of them, Thaisa says, no, I haven't heard from them in months. Shauna then goes home and starts looking over those journals. The journals that detail exactly what went down in those woods for those 19 months. The horror that those girls saw, but also the horror that those girls did. In episode 2, we find out what happened in the direct aftermath of the plane crash. The girls who did survive immediately tried to get out of the plane because it was on fire. Vanessa especially was in a bad situation because she was really close to the fire and she was pinned down. She couldn't get out of her seatbelt. Shauna tried to go and save her, but Jackie, not wanting to lose two of her friends, grabbed Shauna and said, we gotta go, we gotta get out of here, leaving Vanessa. It does get a little awkward for them when Vanessa runs out of the plane and says, surprise. And it's not a nice kind of surprise. It's a, hey, F you guys for leaving me here kind of surprise. When the two exited the plane, they saw the damage and the carnage that took place. Of all the people, Misty was really the one who jumped into action. She took 2 babysitter training courses, and I guess when you take it twice, the instincts kind of kick in. So for example, when Ben, the assistant coach, is pinned down by one of the parts of the plane, Misty finds him and, along with the help of the team, is able to free him. The problem is his leg is completely trashed. While most of the girls are so disgusted by what they're looking at, Misty goes and grabs an axe and just cuts it off like it's nothing. Ben, by the way, passed out from the pain. Misty then walks around and makes sure that everybody's okay. When she's able to kind of confirm that all of the remaining survivors are at least good for the time being, she circles back to Ben to check on his bandages and his wound. They end up waking him up by trying to disinfect it, and unfortunately for Ben, he has no idea that he lost his leg, and the girls don't have the heart to tell him. One person, though, is missing. It's the head coach, and Javi, the coach's youngest son, is walking around screaming for him, but he's not getting an answer. The girls figure that Travis, his older brother, should probably go check up on him. Natalie runs over to let him know, hey, Javi's running around here looking for your dad, but Travis already knows what happened to his dad. He saw his dad fly out the window when his dad was trying to help one of the girls put on an oxygen mask. The door opened up, and the coach flew out. Natalie says, yeah, that sucks, but your brother is still here, so you should probably go help him. To which Travis says, maybe you should mind your own business, and walks off. A little while later, the girls start looking at what items they have available to them. Vanessa is still extremely pissed off at Jackie. She feels like this team leader just left her to die. Shauna is also a little disgusted by Jackie's behavior, but Jackie tells her, for the record, I was trying to save you. All of a sudden, though, the girls hear a scream, and it's from Laura Lee. She found her bag, which is great, but blood started dripping out of the sky, and that's when she looked up and saw her dead coach's body pinned to a tree. The girls start trying to think of a plan on how to get their coach down from the tree, and then Travis gets involved. He just climbs the tree himself, although the weight of both him and his dad end up breaking the branch, and his dad goes crumbling to the ground. Everybody looks away at the sight of their mangled coach's body. Everybody except Misty. It's worth mentioning, though, that a couple of trees away, there's a really weird carving on it. It definitely wasn't put there by animals. They bring the coach's body back to camp, and as Natalie is walking with Travis, she hands him her flask, and he ends up drinking out of it. They continue to get settled that night, figuring that they'll be there max 2 days. The plane has a GPS system, and it's only a matter of time before the authorities locate it and them. And one person hopes that's true a little more than the rest, and that's Lottie. She only has medication for a certain number of days. As all the girls sit around the campfire, Laura Lee starts blaming herself for what happened. She tells them that in her head, she called one of the teachers a cunt, and they all start bursting out laughing. But one by one, they start going around admitting stuff that they're not really proud they did. Most of it's just petty stuff, like stealing clothes and returning it for store gift cards. It gets around to Shauna, and Shauna's big reveal probably should be that she sleeps with Jeff. But luckily for Shauna, the whole conversation stops when they hear Ben scream. And that's because Misty heated up that axe and cauterized the wound. A little while later, Misty, in the middle of the night, sneaks off to go pee, and she overhears a couple of the girls saying how screwed they'd be if she wasn't on that trip. This is the first time that Misty's really felt accepted. Back home, she's a nerd and made fun of and picked on. But here, in this moment, she's really appreciated. It makes kind of what she does next a little understandable. She finds the black box from the plane. It does indeed have a GPS signal, but she smashes it and breaks it. Fast forward to present day Misty, and she's on a date, but it's not going great. Seems more that Misty's into the guy than the guy is into her. And it's not like the guy looks like he has a lot of options, so it's kind of a bad look for Misty in a way. The date goes so bad that Misty ends up guilt-tripping this guy to come into her house. That's how uninterested this guy is. And he looks like he shouldn't be allowed within 500 feet of a school. But when Misty and this guy, Stan, walk into her house, they find out that they're not alone, because Natalie is standing there with that hunting rifle. You don't see it, but you know that Stan does a little fist pump in his head because that's just the opening that he needs to get the hell out of there. Even though Natalie is standing there with a rifle, Misty acts like she doesn't even see it. Natalie says to Misty, "Take it you know why I'm here," and she pulls out a postcard. And on the front of the postcard it says, "Wish you were here," with a mountain range. On the back, it has the same symbol that was carved into the tree. Misty asks Natalie, well, all right, what does it mean? But Natalie points the rifle at Misty and says, "You tell me." And Misty chuckles, because Natalie assumes that it was Misty who sent the postcards, but Misty didn't. She got one herself. Now that the two women have kind of crossed each other off the suspect list, they head to a bar where Misty starts showing Natalie all the information that she's found out about where this postcard might have came from, but also where some of the people in their past are. You could say that in her free time, Misty is kind of a internet detective in a way. Natalie's pretty convinced that whoever sent these postcards is threatening them. Through Misty's amateur detective case file, Jessica Roberts' card catches Natalie's eye. Misty informs Natalie that Jessica claims she's a reporter, but Misty's pretty sure that's a lie. Natalie then finds a poorly photocopied driver's license. She can't believe it because it's Travis's. Not only did Misty find out where Travis is, she has his phone number. And that's a big deal because Travis did not want to be found, but Misty found him. The bartender, though, interrupts the conversation, informing them that somebody bought them a drink, and that somebody is Natalie's old running buddy, Kevin. Kevin traded in his Marilyn Manson shirt for a badge. He's a detective. He can't believe he's looking at Natalie, but Natalie doesn't seem to reciprocate the same nostalgia. These two used to be best friends, but you get the feeling something happened. Kevin puts down his card and tells Natalie, if you want to get a drink, there you go. You know how to reach me. About a minute after Kevin leaves, Natalie grabs the Travis photocopy and leaves. That night, as she sits in her hotel room, with a little bit of liquid courage, she ends up calling Travis up. The guy on the other end, though, tells her, I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. The next morning, as she is extremely hungover, Natalie goes to leave the motel, but her car doesn't work. Fortunately for her, Misty pulls up at that exact same moment. What a coincidence. Misty asks her where she's going, and Natalie tells her she's planning on taking a trip to go see Travis. Misty offers to drive her, and with no other option, Natalie reluctantly gets in the car. Those two weren't the only one to get a postcard, though. So did Thaisa. With her campaign in full swing, she's kind of neglecting the home life a little bit. She misses a parent-teacher conference, and Simone is pretty pissed off about it. Simone fills her in on what the teacher said, and it's not great news. Sammy's having a hard time making friends, and they're pretty concerned about it. Ty, however, doesn't think it's a big deal. Tells Simone, I was a loner when I was a kid. Nothing wrong with a little self-reliance. Simone, though, thinks this is something to worry about. And Simone might have a point. The next day, Ty goes into Sammy's room to read him a book, but he doesn't really seem interested. She asks him if he wants to go to the park, but he says, no, there's no point. I don't have any friends. Ty, though, stands up and says, no, let's go take a walk around the block. She goes to open up his curtains, and she finds some really disturbing pictures taped to the window that Sammy drew. When Ty asks him, why did you do this? Sammy tells her, so the woman in the tree can't see me. She watches me at night. And that's pretty unsettling for Ty. And then finally, we look at what's going on with Shauna. As she's on the phone with Callie, she gets into an accident that is completely 100% her fault, but she starts blaming the person she hit. Luckily for her, the guy who she hit, Adam, is pretty cool and chill. He laughs off the whole idea that it was even his fault in the first place. His whole demeanor, though, just pisses Shauna off. When cooler heads start to prevail, he writes down the number of a body shop that Shauna can contact and drop his name. Guy owes him a favor, he says, and he can fix the car for her. He then gives the pen to Shauna, and she writes her number down just in case they need to exchange information later on. After this little fender bender, she heads to a therapy session with Jeff. When the question of how their sex life is going comes up, they start making excuses about how busy they are. The therapist says, okay, well, let's try this out. I want you each to share a fantasy with each other that you've never done before. So when they get home that night, we start with Jeff's fantasy. He works in a furniture store, so his fantasy is to role play with Shauna being one of the customers. She's down to try it, although she's terrible at it. Like when he asks her, so what can I help you with? She says she's there to return stuff. Jeff then sees the number that's written down on her arm, and he asks what it is, and Shauna has to tell him about the fender bender, and he gets even more annoyed that he's just finding out that she was in an accident. It completely ruins Jeff's entire mood. The next day, as Shauna is preparing dinner, she gets a weird phone call, and it's the guy that she hit, Adam. He wants to know why she didn't call the body shop. And he knows she didn't call the body shop because it turns out Adam works at the body shop. She tells Adam, I just can't really afford that right now. And he says, okay, well, I'll do it for free if you have dinner with me. Shauna definitely contemplates it, but she tells him no. She just can't. And it embarrasses Adam a little bit, and he apologizes, but says, you just kind of seem like somebody who doesn't play by the rules. Shauna then hangs up, a little mad at herself, and she continues to prepare dinner. But that roast that she took out is not going to be thawed in time, and she needs some kind of meat to throw in that chili. So there's a dead rabbit outside. She skins it, guts it, and cooks it up. The rabbit stew is a big hit with the family until Shauna reveals that she did indeed use a rabbit outside. Both Callie and Jeff are grossed out by it, but they also don't believe that she actually did it. Later that night, Shauna tries again with Jeff, role-playing much better this time. Those two kids really get after it, like it's 1996 all over again. Afterwards, Jeff gets up and goes and takes a shower, and Shauna hears his phone buzz. And when she checks on it, it's a text message from a girl named Bianca who says, "Tomorrow, usual place, 4 p.m. Don't be late." In episode 3, we pick up 3 days after the crash. The girls get all of the bodies together, bury them, and have a little ceremony for it, with Laura Lee saying some prayers. After they get done with the ceremony, tensions are running high. They're running out of food. Lottie has taken her last pill, so she's out. And Jackie has a poison ivy rash that she can't stop itching. But the biggest cause of stress is the fact that it's been 3 days and no one's come to get them. The only person who kind of still believes that somebody's coming is Jackie. Everybody else has accepted the fact that after 3 days, they would have already shown up at this point. But as Jackie is trying to convince everybody that somebody is still coming, Thaisa runs up and says, "Guys, there's a lake. It's probably 4 or 5 miles away, but we should go." Jackie is staunchly opposed, though. She doesn't want to leave the crash site in case somebody is coming for them. But that's her only argument. Ty's argument is the fact that they're running out of water. Both girls make their cases and they put it to a vote. It's not like Jackie's the only one who wants to stay at the crash site, but the lake wins out. And to Jackie's surprise, Shauna votes for the lake. The fact that Shauna didn't vote alongside Jackie leaves Jackie pretty pissed off. The girls then pack up their stuff. Shauna writes on the side of the plane, SOS, gone to the lake, and then they make their way through the woods. On the way to the lake, they realize just what dangerous conditions they're actually in when they come across a bear carcass with a buzzard picking at it. They start questioning what could have possibly done something to a bear, and Ben says probably wolves. If the pack's big enough, they can kill anything. The girls keep moving, and eventually, it takes a while, but they find that lake, and when they do, they all rush into it. But it's been 3 days, and these are horned up teens we're talking about, so all of a sudden, they start looking at each other in maybe a different light. Like 3 of the girls watch Travis go into the water, and one of them says, "Is Travis hot?" And one girl who definitely thinks so is Natalie. Ty is doing the same thing, but it's with Vanessa. They all are kind of hanging out at the lake having fun until Lottie notices that there's a reflection in the mountains. All the girls then get out of the water and they go to investigate it. And it's a cabin. They start banging on the doors and no one comes out. And when they eventually get their way into the cabin, they realize that no one's been there for a long time. They start looking around the cabin for anything they can use, including food, and Jackie finds some. But when she opens it up, it's completely rancid. And the reality of what they're going through finally hits her. She lashes out at her teammates. "This is why we should have stayed on the plane." But Van goes, "Well, we didn't. So how is this helping?" And Jackie just runs out of the cabin and cries. A little while later, Shauna comes out, tries to make amends with Jackie, giving her blankets, but explains, "I didn't vote your way because I just didn't think it was right. Nobody knows what's right or wrong out here. This could be the wrong way, but in that moment, I felt like we should go to the lake." The 2 girls end up making up. She's not the only one who has a dose of reality, though. Travis goes out to check on Javi, and Javi has been chewing this piece of gum that his dad gave him to make sure his ears didn't pop on the plane ride. He can't stop chewing it. Travis has been yelling at him to get rid of it until finally he takes matters into his own hands. He puts him in a headlock until he finally drops it on the ground and he chucks it, yelling at Javi, "Dad was a dick, and he's dead." He immediately feels kind of bad about the situation, and then he feels even worse when he sees that Natalie was watching it. And the final guy who's had enough is a guy who lost his damn leg. It's Ben. He starts swatting at a mosquito or a fly that's near his face until he falls off the porch. And at that moment, he just starts screaming and cursing. Misty tries to go and check on him, but he is so tired of Misty that he backhands her. Misty, though, is undeterred. She starts trying to console him as he's asking the question, "Why couldn't I have just died?" The girls decide to make camp in that cabin because why wouldn't you? But there is one girl who has not been inside. That's Lottie. Even at night, she's just standing on the porch. Ty goes out and says, "All right, you got to come in now. There's wolves out there." But Lottie just says, "I have a bad feeling about this place." Ty thinks that's ridiculous, and she makes Lottie come inside. In the middle of the night, though, Ty hears something in the ceiling. She gets up, goes and checks on it, and there's a ladder to the attic. When she takes it up, she finds Lottie in the corner, and when she asks her what she's doing, Lottie says, "I told you so." When Ty turns around, there's a mummified corpse sitting in a chair. Now, present-day Thaisa is not doing great because her political opponent has put out a bad smear campaign against her. Really bad. Her opponent kind of pokes fun at cannibalism, which is a well-known thing that the girls had to do to survive. The campaign has her stressed out and pissed off. Simone tells her it's the weekend. Enjoy it and go be with your son. So she decides to take Sammy to the park. While she's at the park, she gets a phone call from Jessica Roberts. But it's not to do an interview. It's because Jessica Roberts is working for Ty. Ty sent her out to track down all of the members of the team that are still left and see if they're willing to share their story. She doesn't want any surprises coming up in the November elections. So she's making sure that her teammates are holding to their word and are keeping quiet. When Ty mentions the smear campaign that her opponent, Phil Bathurst, is about to put out, Jessica says, I have some dirt on Phil's daughter. She's a junkie. She's been in rehab 3 times. In fact, he covered up a heroin possession charge against her last year. And she's 18. She's fair game. Ty is torn about bringing his family into this. She has to hop off the phone because she sees that Sammy and another kid have gotten in a little bit of a scuffle. Sammy ended up punching the kid in the face. And there is absolutely no remorse on Sammy's face at all. When they get home, Ty tells Simone what happened, and Ty doesn't really think it's a big deal, but Simone absolutely does. One of the reasons why Ty seems to be okay with it is because she thinks that Sammy was defending her. Now she thinks that all of the parents are talking about that political campaign that her opponent put out. She's really feeling the stress of the campaign, and Simone has to remind her, our son just assaulted a kid. Ty gets up and walks over to Sammy and says, we need to talk about what happened, but he says no. And then he tells Ty to be quiet. She takes his toy doll away from him, and Sammy stands up very sternly and demands it back. Both Ty and Simone are really surprised by Sammy's attitude, and Ty sends him to his room. She waits a few hours and goes to check on Sammy, seeing if he's going to be mad at her forever. They talk it out, and Sammy admits he does deserve to be punished. But then he asks her, why don't people like you? She tells him that she's different from what people expect, but whatever they say about her, it's not true. This is kind of the last straw for Ty. She walks into her office and calls up Phil. She tells him, I know about your dog's drug addiction, and I understand why you covered it up, but just know, you crossed the line with that smear campaign. So one more act like that, and I'll have everybody in the state knowing what you did and what a druggie your daughter is. Ty hangs up and ends up falling asleep on the couch that night. She wakes up, though, with a weird feeling. She goes downstairs into the basement, starts creeping around, and she finds the doll that she took from Sammy all mangled and destroyed. Sammy's behavior is cause for concern for Ty. When she was a little girl, her grandmother was on her deathbed and she saw something. She was begging Ty to keep this spirit thing away from her. Now Sammy has got a mean streak. He's talking about people looking at him and trees. All of it is cause for concern for Ty. Shauna has also got something concerning her. It's whether or not her husband is cheating on her. After seeing the text message the next day, she plants a seed for Jeff. She tells him that she's going to need to be picked up at the auto body shop, and it just so happens she needs to be picked up the exact time he's supposed to meet Bianca. Jeff makes up a really bad excuse on why he can't, and he heads off to work, but Shauna follows him. When Jeff gets in his car to leave for this meeting with Bianca, Shauna continues to follow him, and she follows him all the way to a hotel. Jeff ends up getting valet parking. Shauna ends up parking her car herself. It means that she has no idea what room Jeff is in. She goes to the front desk and asks the concierge, but the concierge refuses to give her any information. Shauna even tries to play it off like she's Homeland Security, but that doesn't work. And that's when she gets a little bit of help from Adam. Adam makes up an excuse on why he's there, saying that the garage isn't too far away and it's the only place in town to get a good martini. So they head off to the bar to get a martini. Adam is talking, but Shauna's not really listening. The whole time she's looking past Adam for any hint of Jeff, and then she sees it. Jeff walks by with a pretty cute blonde, and it makes Shauna extremely insecure. At that point, she kind of figures that Jeff is absolutely cheating on her, so two can play at that game. She ends up getting a hotel room with Adam, and the two, you have to assume, end up doing adult fun stuff. But that fun stuff isn't even comparable to what Misty and Natalie are up to. They're on their road trip trying to meet Travis, but Misty is driving Natalie nuts. At one point, they stop off at a gas station, and Natalie peer pressures Misty to go inside and get them some food. She starts rummaging around her glove box, and Natalie finds the piece of equipment from her car that was missing. Confirms that Misty was the one who sabotaged her. When Misty comes back with the food, though, Natalie doesn't say anything. A few hours later, they arrive at the house that Travis is supposedly living in, but Travis isn't there. They break in and they start looking for anything that they can use to maybe track him down. Misty is able to find a pay stub, but Natalie gets distracted when she walks into Travis's room and sees a flannel that she recognizes. Then, on his nightstand, she sees a picture of the two. They definitely were a thing back in the day. At one point, Natalie looks up, and in the mirror, she swears she sees Travis, but when she turns around, he's not there. Natalie and Misty walk out in the living room and start talking about their next move, but that's when the cop shows up and arrests them for trespassing. He throws them in jail, and he gives them their one call. He gives Natalie the call first. The only person she knows who might be able to bail her out is Ty. Natalie kind of jokes about the fact that she's back in prison, but Ty doesn't find it funny because she's the one who's paying for the rehab facilities that Natalie is going into. Although Natalie does remind her, I didn't ask for that. Ty then asks Natalie what she's doing in some random-ass small town, and Natalie tells her that she found out where Travis was and she went to go track him down. When Ty hears that, her mood completely changes. She refuses to bail Natalie out because, as she tells Natalie, you two are the worst for each other. I'm not being a part of it. Natalie can't believe that Ty is refusing to help her. She actually cries about it. Next up for the phone call is Misty, and her phone call works. The person bails them out on the other end. Natalie asks, who the hell did you call? And Misty reveals that she called Kevin. She ended up taking his card, texting Kevin, but the whole time pretending to be Natalie. Natalie is not amused at the fact that Misty is catfishing her old friend. It's super awkward for her. Misty, on the other hand, thinks she's playing matchmaker. But now that they're out of jail, they're not done trying to track down Travis. After all, they know where he works. And that night, they drive to the farm where he works, but they don't find Travis. At least, they don't find him alive, because Travis hung himself. And Natalie is absolutely distraught. Travis did leave a note, and it says, tell Nat she was right. In episode 4, the girls bury that body they found. Doesn't really put Lottie's mind at ease. She knows that bad things happen in that place. But the group has a big issue. They're running out of food. The good news is they have a gun, but nobody knows how to use it. They don't have to worry about bullets because whoever lived there before was hunkering down like it was the apocalypse. So they've got plenty of ammunition to practice with. And they're going to need to practice because they're going to need somebody out there hunting for them. One by one, the girls start practicing. None of them are very good at it. Travis goes, and he's fairly decent. And then he hands the rifle off to Nat. But Natalie feels weird about guns. Her father was a douchebag. When he came home one day and caught her and Kevin in a room together, doing absolutely nothing but listening to music, he flipped out. He started calling Natalie a whore, questioning who he raised, and then even beating on her mother when her mother tried to defend her. Natalie went and grabbed the family shotgun to try to make him stop, but he laughed at it, grabbing it back. He started insulting them as he was leaving, and Natalie threw an insult back. When he turned around, he tripped, shotgun went off, blew half his face off. So, yeah, she's not real comfortable around guns. So when she chokes, Travis, not knowing any of that, ends up insulting her, telling her she should stick to stuff she's good at, like folding laundry or sucking on things. And that's when Nat grabs the gun, says, I'm going again, and nails it. After practicing their balance using a quarter, they move on to actually shooting the gun at cans. Travis, once again, does a fairly decent job. Natalie, on the other hand, nails every single can. It's pretty clear that out of the whole group, the two best shooters are Natalie and Travis. Ben ends up giving them the rifle, telling them to work as a team, but please, for the love of God, bring back food. The two people noticeably absent from this shooting challenge are Javi and Shauna. Javi finds Shauna writing in her journal, and he questions why she's not practicing with the gun. She tells him, I'm really not meant to use firearms. She ends up tearing some of the pages out of her journal and giving them to Javi to encourage him to do the same thing. Write what's going on. But over with Javi's brother, Travis, even though he was told to work as a team, that's not really his thing. He's walking away from Natalie, and he appears to be a man on a mission. And, in fact, he is. He walks all the way back to the crash site. But that's because his father was buried with their grandfather's ring on him. Travis, seeing what the death of their father did to Javi, needs to bring it back for him. So he headed to the crash site to dig up that body and grab that ring. When Natalie hears the reason why he came back, she decides to help. They get down to the body, and Travis can't bring himself to actually do it. So Natalie ends up doing it for him. That simple gesture really forged their friendship. All of a sudden, Travis stops being a dick to her. As they make their way back to camp, they end up seeing a deer. Natalie ends up killing it, and now they've got dinner for the night. As those two were out trying to find dinner for the group, The group needed some alternatives in case they came up empty. They start looking for some edible plants. One of the girls on the team, named Akila, used to be a Girl Scout, so she's pretty well versed in what plants will kill you and which ones won't. But as they walk through the forest, Misty is getting impatient. She says to Akila, "Can you just show us something that is edible so we can get going?" And the girls start questioning what's the rush. Vanessa jokes, "Oh, well, Coach must need a sponge bath." Because Misty has been acting as Ben's caregiver. Misty, though, doesn't really find the joke funny and starts to walk off. As Misty walks right past Lottie, Lottie ends up seeing that symbol once again carved into the tree. But she doesn't really focus on it very long because she hears Jackie yell, "Oh my God, guys, come over here." And when the group reassembles, there's a small airplane in the middle of the woods. They figure it must have belonged to the guy that they found in the attic. Laura Lee hops in the cockpit, they start messing around with it, and with a turn of a propeller and a turn of a key, the thing turns on. But Laura Lee starts moving the plane forward. She can't figure out how to make that stop, and that propeller is pretty damn dangerous. Jackie ends up pushing Vanessa out of the way so she doesn't get hit by it. When she does that, though, she's kind of transfixed by the propeller. She's just frozen still. Luckily for her, the plane ends up getting caught up in the vines and just stopping right before it chews her up. She's pretty freaked out. Most of the girls are. And Lottie says it didn't want him to leave. The group then collects some shrubs, just in case Travis and Natalie end up striking out and going back to camp. But Travis and Natalie don't strike out. They bring back the deer that was caught, but there's one issue. Now what do you do with it? Ben tells them we got to bleed it out and asks for a volunteer to cut the deer's throat. Misty excitedly throws her hand up, but Ben acts like he doesn't see it and gives the blade to Shauna. This really pisses Misty off. And that night, as everybody is enjoying the fruits of Natalie and Travis's labor, as Ben gets up to go back in the cabin, Misty trips him. She's trying to do a little bit of Munchausen syndrome, and it seems like Ben knows that he was tripped on purpose. But back with present-day Misty, she decides to go check up on her friend, or at least someone she thinks she's friends with, Natalie. She actually pulls up an article about what to say to somebody when they're dealing with somebody's suicide. Natalie, however, doesn't really want to talk to Misty. Misty even asks her to hang out, but Natalie says, "No, I have plans." And when Misty tries to ask, "With who?" Natalie blows her off and says, "None of your business." And it wasn't like Natalie is lying. She does have plans that night, but during the day, she goes back home. She checks up on her mother, who is not doing well health-wise at all. But being back in that small trailer has a rush of memories fly back to her, mainly from the day that her dad died. She came there, though, with a purpose. She looks around her old bedroom and finds it. It's a cassette tape that Kevin had made for her back in the day. The reason why she needs it? She's meeting Kevin that night for dinner. The first thing she does is apologize to Kevin for the whole catfishing situation. They then get into what exactly Natalie was doing up in God knows what, getting arrested for B&E, and how Kevin became a cop. But little do they know that the whole time they're being watched. Misty ended up following them there. But they're not being watched just by Misty. They're also being watched by Jessica Roberts. And Misty sees her at the bar sitting there. And Misty wants to alert Natalie to that fact, so she texts her, but Natalie doesn't see it. She then calls Natalie, but Natalie ignores the call. Misty has no choice but to just sit back and enjoy her martini. Eventually, this reunion does end. Kevin and Natalie get up, and that's when Kevin recognizes Misty outside. Natalie storms up to Misty, demanding to know what she's doing there, and Misty tells her, "You see that reporter over there? That's Jessica Roberts. She's been following you." Natalie, though, doesn't really care. She's more annoyed about Misty's intrusion into her life. She tells Misty, "Go home," and then walks back over to Kevin. Now that they're back alone and out of the eye of Misty, Natalie gives Kevin the cassette tape. That's a blast from the past that he was not expecting. But the question that's been on his mind the entire time is, what the hell happened to them? Because they were best friends. And the last time he saw her, she was getting out of his car saying, "I'll call you tomorrow," and that never happened. He doesn't even give her time to answer. He asks her, "You had to know that I was obsessed with you, right?" And then he goes in to kiss her, but she pulls back, telling him that all she can think of right now is Travis and it's not the right time. She just doesn't know if it was murder or suicide. She's pretty convinced it was murder, though. He, being a detective, offers to pull the toxicology reports and try to find out the answers. Kevin then walks Natalie to her car, and she does end up kissing him, sending him extremely mixed signals. But back over at that restaurant, Misty did not go home. She ends up storming up to Jessica Roberts and saying, "I don't know what you're doing here, but I've got my eye on you." Jessica isn't too fazed by this. She asks Misty, how was your little trip up north? Misty doesn't answer the question and tells Jessica, I know you see somebody that you don't think you should be afraid of, but you're wrong. Jessica just agrees and walks off. Over with Jessica's employer, Thaisa, she's getting ready for a big benefit dinner. She's trying to learn all the information about these big donors so that she doesn't look foolish when she meets them. Simone is helping her prep, but as Thaisa is getting ready, she looks over in the armoire and she sees Sammy just staring at her, and in like a creepy way. Ty doesn't really have time to focus on her creepy kid though, she's too stressed out. So far, she's tanking in the polls, but there's a donor at this dinner whose money could really influence this election. Ty needs that money. Simone and Ty then go to this dinner, and the host greets them, but tells them, get comfortable. Dinner is going to be amazing. It's a whole roasted pig. That is a slight issue for Ty. She's a vegetarian. I guess after you kind of eat your friends, you tend to not want to eat meat ever again. People at this dinner start walking up to her, asking her questions, but the whole time, she's on the lookout for this big donor, Diane Raffleson. Problem is, every time she tries to go over to Diane, she gets stopped by somebody else looking to talk to her. She doesn't want to be rude to the constituents, so she ends up having way too many conversations until eventually it becomes too much and she has to go to a separate room just to kind of get away from it all. And ironically, that's when she finally gets her one-on-one with Diane. As Ty is smoking a cigarette, trying to take the edge off, Diane walks in and says, hey, can I get one of those? And Ty excitedly says, yeah, of course. They both mention how they've been trying to talk to each other all night, but they just haven't had the opportunity until now. The conversation between the two women starts off great. Diane tells Ty how big of a fan she is of her, and she is willing to throw her backing behind her. But then Diane starts putting some seeds in the ground, saying how people like to confide in her. She has secrets that she's never told. And what Diane really wants is in exchange for her support of Thaisa, she wants to know what really happened out there. The cannibalism thing has always been rumored, but never proven. The girls have always stuck to the same story. At first, Ty does try to give her the official statement that Diane already knows, but when Diane tries to pry more, Ty lashes out, saying, why? I mean, why do you get that? Because you're rich and powerful? And that's exactly what Diane thinks. She starts going over her resume on why Ty should show her respect, and Ty tells her to go F herself and walks off. And then finally, there's Shauna. Oh, Shauna definitely did the damn thing with Adam. It looks like he gave it to her for a whole 4.5 minutes. Attaboy. But that meeting isn't going to be a one-off. The next night, they actually hang out, and they act like teenagers. They park Adam's truck in a liquor store parking lot and ask somebody else to buy them alcohol. They then go play some miniature golf, which Adam is terrible at. They even go skinny dipping, jumping off a bridge into a body of water below. And they wrap up the night with a little car sex. When Shauna gets home, she's just about to open up the door when she gets a phone call from someone she hasn't talked to in a long time, Misty. Shauna is kind of like everybody else. She isn't too thrilled to hear from Misty. She has Misty get to the point of her phone call, and Misty says, just thought you'd want to know, Travis is dead. And that really does seem to affect Shauna, because when she walks in and Jeff says hello to her, she doesn't have anything to say. In episode 4, the girls are trying to have fun, but it's hard. They're in the middle of the woods in a creepy cabin where they found somebody's corpse. A simple creak in the floorboards in the attic has them all thinking that maybe there's a ghost up there. Jackie tries to play it off like it's an animal or a branch, but others are pretty convinced the place is haunted. To just shut everybody up, Ben tells everybody, maybe we should just go to bed. The next morning, though, Misty walks in to check on Ben because she's still kind of taking care of him with the whole leg thing, and she's greeted by morning wood. It's not intentional. Ben's sleeping, but Misty is transfixed by it. She almost touches it, but when she does that, it wakes Ben up and it freaks him out a little bit. He yells at her, do not touch me. Misty goes downstairs and starts doing some chores with the other girls. Everybody but Jackie. And the fact that Jackie isn't pitching in is noticeable. She complains about having cramps, but the problem is all the girls have synced up, so they all have cramps. They're all going through it together. But they're all chipping in, and Jackie isn't. When Jackie comes out to have breakfast, Mari stops her and says, how about you actually go get some water, since breakfast isn't going anywhere? Jackie's a little surprised about the attitude, but she goes and gets the water. When she gets to the lake, she sees Lottie just standing in the water. She asks Lottie what she's doing there and if she's cold, and Lottie just says, yeah, actually, I am. I thought it'd be warmer. It's weird behavior, but Jackie doesn't really pay any mind to it and grabs the water and goes back to camp. She's kind of struggling to bring the water back, and the only person that's willing to help her is Shauna. Jackie asks Shauna, "Why are you so chipper? Aren't you on your period like the rest of us?" But Shauna says, "No, actually, I'm late. It was probably the stress of the plane crash." And Jackie makes comment, "Well, yeah, it's a good thing you're a virgin or we'd really have to worry." Having no idea that Shauna isn't a virgin, and she very well could be pregnant with Jeff's baby. But Shauna figures this will be suspicious. She goes and sticks one of the rags they're using for tampons into the blood from the deer that they killed, but she's caught by Ty. Ty doesn't make mention of what she saw, even when Ty heads back to camp, and she sees Shauna walk up to Jackie and say, "Hey, thanks, you jinxed me." The only person that knows that Shauna's lying is Taissa. Shauna looks over at Jackie and sees that she's still not helping out. She has to have a one-on-one conversation with her friend. She flat out tells her, people are noticing. And it's not like Jackie doesn't know that she's not helping out. She's just not built for this kind of lifestyle. She's slowly breaking down, having no idea how much longer she can honestly live out there, bored out of her mind. Shauna gives her a little bit of a pep talk that does end up working, but at the end of it, she tells Jackie, "We need you." And then she gives her a necklace and gives her a hug. But this group is horny as hell. Misty is clearly crushing on Ben. Travis kisses Natalie for the first time as they're hunting, and then there's Ty and Vanessa who are hooking up, although they have to stop when Mari comes running out of the cabin convinced that something crawled down her shirt when she was near the attic. The problem is there's nothing there. So Jackie comes up with the idea of doing a seance that night. It's stupid, but it could be fun. That night, all the girls head up to the attic, put some candles around, and get weird. Everybody's pretty much into this seance, except Taissa, who thinks it's dumb, Laura Lee, who thinks it's part of the occult, and Ben, who is more content with sitting downstairs and drinking the tea that Misty gave him to help with the swelling. Shauna stands up with the group, blindfolded, holding a string with the knife on the end of it. All the girls start asking questions, and when the string starts moving, they figure that's a yes. If it doesn't move, that's a no. They start off with asking simple stuff, like, were we going to win nationals? The answer to that was no. Misty asks if the person she likes her back, and the answer to that is yes. But then Javi asks the question that probably they're all thinking but are scared to ask. Are we going to die out here? And the knife starts moving. But all of a sudden, Lottie starts screaming, and then the window bursts open and puts all the candles out. Now, nothing came through the window, but Lottie is beside herself. All the girls are pretty freaked out. They figure that Lottie might legitimately be possessed, especially when she starts talking French, and as Jackie says, she's not a good French student. Jackie starts trying to decipher what Lottie is saying, and the best she can come up with is that Lottie is repeating over and over again, "It wants blood." This is obviously causing a pretty big commotion upstairs, so Laura Lee is concerned about it downstairs. She asks Ben, should we go do something? But then Ben starts projectile vomiting like the Exorcist, because that tea that Misty gave him was drugged. So Ben's not going to be able to help. Laura Lee grabs her Bible and runs upstairs, but it's too late. Lottie did as she was told, or at least thought she was told to do. She gave it blood by smashing her head against the window. It cuts her pretty good. And Laura Lee comes upstairs to see all of the girls huddled around Lottie, and Laura Lee starts screaming, "May the power of Christ compel you. Be gone, Satan." Until finally she just chucks her Bible at Lottie. That does seem to kind of wake Lottie up a little bit, because Lottie looks at Laura Lee and says, "What the hell?" having no idea that she had just gone through some kind of fit. All of the girls are completely freaked the hell out. But there's somebody who's not freaked out. He's pissed, and it's Ben. When everybody kind of settles down, he goes up to Misty and says, "Why the hell did you drug me?" And she starts to talk about how she has these feelings for him, and he gets close and says, "Don't say it, because I have them too. But Misty, I'm your teacher. Because of that, we can't act on it. I could never live with myself. You have to understand, you're not even 18 yet. And if the other girls find out about it, they'll get jealous. So for the time being, this needs to be our little secret." Misty doesn't really care about acting on it. She's just over the moon with the fact that somebody likes her back. Misty and Ben head inside, and they go to bed. Separately, by the way. But the girls are having trouble sleeping because of what happened in the attic. So Taissa says, "I'll go up there and prove you guys all wrong." Shauna, though, feels like Ty shouldn't be the only person up there. So she heads up, and that's when Ty asks, "How far along are you?" Shauna just can't believe that Ty has any idea. And she asks Ty, "You won't tell anyone, will you?" And Ty reassures her, "I won't. But if we're out here long, people are going to find out." But modern-day Taissa is not doing too well. Her campaign is drowning. She's getting crushed in the polls. As she's discussing this with Simone, she gets an eerie feeling, and when she looks outside, she sees a wolf. This is a trend with her, seeing this wolf. She doesn't realize, though, it's not real. She rushes outside to go confront it, but of course, there's nothing there. When she goes back inside to the house, she sees that somebody has written the word spill in red paint on her front door. This is something from Bathurst's campaign. She decides to deal with this later because that night is Halloween, so they're going to take Sammy out. And Sammy goes dressed as a sandwich. No wonder the kid's so weird. Who wants to go dressed as a sandwich for Halloween? But as Sammy is looking at his haul from the night, Ty checks the mail and she sees that Phil Bathurst has sent her a message. It's not like it was directed just at her, it's canvassing the area. But the postcard says Thaisa Turner is hiding from the truth. When Simone sees it, she says, "Speaking of spill, it's about time you spill on your opponent's junkie daughter." But Ty is still pretty conflicted about doing that. Ty then takes Sammy's costume up to his closet, but she notices something under his bed. And it's a can of red paint and a brush, which means that Sammy was the one who did it. Both Ty and Simone confront Sammy about doing it, but he swears that it wasn't him. It was this woman in the trees. Ty tells Sammy, "Stop making this stuff up. You did it. Admit it." But Sammy yells, "I'm not lying," and then throws the candy all over the place. It's at this moment that Thaisa really realizes just how bad Sammy has gotten. She's been so consumed with her campaign that she's turned a blind eye towards it. Simone has to have a heart-to-heart with her about how much damage this campaign is doing, not only to the family, but to her as well. She's losing weight, she's not sleeping well, and it's all for what? To get crushed in Election Day? Simone wants Thaisa to drop out, although she won't ask her to do that. She hides behind the whole family angle of, you don't get this time back. At the end of the conversation, Thaisa agrees she needs to concede the race. She calls a press conference with the news the next day in front of her house, and she's got her concession speech written out. When Ty looks back at Simone and Sammy, she can't bring herself to do it. She pulls a 180. She shows the press the words painted on her house. Even though she knows that one of Bathurst's people didn't do it, you don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. And instead of conceding, she doubles down. Halloween was also a big day for Shauna and her family. Callie has plans to go into the city and celebrate Halloween, but Shauna shoots that down. She feels like her teenage daughter probably shouldn't be going out and partying in the city. She wants her to just stand on the porch and give out candy. Callie questions why Shauna can't do it, and Shauna says, "I have book club," which is the new phrase she's using for hanging out with Adam. When Callie leaves the room and Jeff walks in, Jeff says, "You really shouldn't be so hard on her." And Shauna can't believe that Jeff is sticking up for Callie, considering Callie is kind of a bitch. It kind of starts a mini fight, with Shauna feeling like Jeff just lets Callie do whatever she wants, and Jeff feeling like Shauna is way too hard on her. When the conversation goes into the book club, Jeff suggests that they go together, and Shauna makes up a poor excuse on how he can't go because he didn't read the book. But the book club is going to take place in a nightclub. Shauna doesn't really feel too comfortable there because it's more of a younger crowd, but Adam reassures her, "No, don't worry about it. You'll fit in." As Shauna starts walking around the club, she sees a girl dressed up in the Yellowjackets soccer uniform, and she is convinced that it's Jackie. There's only one problem. Jackie's dead. When Shauna gets close to the girl and turns her around, it turns out it's not Jackie, it's actually Callie. And they're both very surprised to see each other. Shauna's pretty pissed off about the fact that not only did Callie take the uniform from her closet, but she disobeyed her orders and she came into the city for Halloween. Adam, though, interrupts the conversation because he sees Shauna getting into it with somebody and feels like he probably should de-escalate the situation. The problem is he has no idea that Shauna's getting into it with her teenage daughter. And even though Callie is on Molly, she sees what's going on. Shauna ends up driving Callie home, and the two have an adult conversation about what happened. Callie feels like the only way that her mom could have gotten a hot guy like Adam is for the Yellowjackets buzz. But Shauna says he actually doesn't know anything about that. And Callie chuckles at that because if Adam has Shauna's name and he has the internet, he knows who she is. Callie then asks, "When did you fall out of love with Dad?" And Shauna pulls the, "It's complicated" card. Shauna then tells Callie that the uniform she's wearing wasn't hers, it was Jackie's. Jackie's parents gave it to Shauna on what would have been Jackie's 40th birthday to remember her by. But Shauna spent just about every single day thinking about Jackie. The thing is, Shauna and Jeff don't talk about Jackie, ever. When Shauna says, bad things happen in life, but I'm fine, Callie says, "Mom, you're not fine." They then head off to bed, and the next morning, Callie wakes up, and Shauna gives her some Pedialyte to kind of cure that hangover. Even though they had a nice conversation the previous night, Callie is still a bitch. She tries to hold it over Shauna's head about the fact that now she knows Shauna is cheating on Jeff with this Adam guy. She plays her trump card, telling Shauna, this is the way this is going to work. I'm going to go basically wherever I want, and you're not going to say a word or I tell Dad. But Shauna then lays out exactly how that situation goes. How Callie's college fund gets depleted because they need to afford a divorce lawyer. How Callie's going to spend her weekends giving her dad dating advice, which will make sense because her dad is now dating girls just about her age. And then Shauna puts Callie on the spot by calling Jeff into the room saying, Callie has something to tell you. And Callie folds. Not telling Jeff about the affair, but actually telling Jeff, I went to the city last night and got high. So score one for Shauna. And then the final Yellowjackets we'll talk about are Natalie and Misty. Natalie gets a phone call from Kevin telling her that he got the toxicology reports and Travis wasn't on anything. Natalie, though, feels like there's something still fishy about the whole situation. She calls Misty and says, don't you know a guy that can break into people's emails? Kevin got the toxicology report, but I need the whole police file on what happened to Travis. Misty says, yeah, I do. Consider it done. And later in the night, Misty comes over to the place that Natalie's staying and gives her the good news and bad news. The good news is she brought her an aroma diffuser that's in the shape of an owl. The bad news is when her contact found out that he was accessing files from a cop, he didn't take that too well. Because of that, he wants to meet in public to discuss the terms of the exchange. Misty's never met this guy. They really just know each other by their chat handles. So Natalie and Misty head off to this place to go meet this guy. And the guy is exactly what you'd expect him to be. Nerdy, loner. But Natalie isn't going to haggle with this guy. She has Misty pour gasoline all over his pants, and then Natalie pulls out a lighter and says, is it worth it for me to light your dick on fire? The answer to that question is no, and he hands over the file. The two women head back to Natalie's and start going over the pictures. But Misty notices that in the pictures, it looks like there's wax on the ground. Misty then connects all the pictures together, and when you circle and you connect the dots, it makes the symbol from the woods that's been carved into the tree and carved into the attic floorboard. The next morning, Natalie calls Taissa right after she made that press conference because she has to tell somebody. Natalie shows the information to Taissa saying, even though the police say it was a suicide, somebody set up candles, burnt them, and then took them away. Both women then suddenly get a text message from an unknown number that says, gather $50K and await further instructions. Do not discuss this with your teammates. I will know. And there's an emoticon symbol that mirrors the one from the woods. Even though it says to not discuss it with their teammates, Ty gets on the phone with Shauna. When Ty tells Shauna that Travis is dead, Shauna says, I already know. Misty told me. And Natalie starts yelling, that conniving, poodled hair freak? Shauna, get here now. We have a problem. But little do the two women know they are being watched by Misty because that owl diffuser had a camera in it. And Misty is hearing everything they're saying. In episode 6, the girls are quickly running out of food. They run out of meat and they're having trouble finding berries. As Lottie is walking around, she has a vision of a deer who is shedding its antlers. And having visions is something that Lottie's dealt with. That's probably what she needed medication for. When she was a little girl, she started screaming as her parents were stopped at a red light. Her parents turned around, and because Lottie was screaming, they avoided getting into a deadly accident. Her parents didn't really think she had premonitions, but these visions that Lottie has always had are starting to pop back up now that she's run out of her pills. One of the reasons why they might be having trouble getting food is their hunting party is too busy making out. But they're not the only ones who are having a little fling. Vanessa and Ty are still hooking up. As they're doing so, topless, in the water, Vanessa looks down and notices that Ty's fingers are extremely dirty. The thing is, Ty has no idea how they got that way. Ty, though, starts talking about going and finding help, which Van thinks is crazy because they're surrounded by woods, but Ty makes the case, how do we actually know that? I mean, yeah, it's true. We are in the middle of nowhere, but for all we know, there could be a town a mile or two away. I'm not going to stay here and just wait to die. I got to go get help. Van, though, thinks this is crazy and doesn't know how exactly she plans on surviving in the middle of the woods. When Vanessa and Ty wrap up their makeout sesh, Ty goes back to the attic where she finds Shauna, who is having trouble sleeping. She's having really weird dreams where she gives birth to a sandwich or a burger. And the stress of possibly being pregnant is really getting to Shauna. She starts talking about a girl who gave herself an abortion by taking the wire from her bra and, doing it that way. Ty says, "You're out of your mind. You'll die." But Shauna brings up the point that she's probably going to die either way. She's in the middle of nowhere, and the closest nurse is Misty. At least this way, she won't die having her best friend's boyfriend's child. Ty begs her to just wait because she has that plan to go find help. But the next day, the lack of food is getting to everybody, especially a girl who thinks she's pregnant. As Shauna and Jackie look around at the traps they set for rabbits, which, by the way, are empty, Jackie starts talking about how much she misses Jeff, which is insanely awkward for Shauna. Jackie tells Shauna, "Did I tell you he told me he loved me the day before we left?" I didn't say it back, but I probably should have. Shauna then asks her, "Do you love him?" And Jackie tells her, "I don't know. I just shouldn't have made him wait. Now his first time is going to be with somebody else, and it's not going to be with me." The two girls then head back to the cabin, and a little while later, Natalie and Travis return once again empty-handed. Most of the girls are just poking fun at them for clearly hooking up, but Jackie's legitimately pissed off and says, "Is this why we have no food? Because you guys can't stay out of each other's pants?" This starts a bit of a squabble between Jackie and Natalie, where Taissa has to get involved. Misty actually goes up to Natalie at the end of it and says, "I know how you feel. I have a secret boyfriend too." Shh, as if anyone believes that. But all the talk of what Travis and Natalie may or may not be doing has gotten back to Ben. So he has to sit Travis down and have a father-son kind of conversation, which Travis doesn't want to do, but Ben lays it out. The last thing we need out here is a baby. So Ben digs into his pockets and pulls out a bunch of condoms, which is very surprising to Travis because they weren't supposed to be in Seattle very long. But Ben's message to Travis is clear. Don't be a fool. Wrap your tool. The next day when Taissa wakes up, she's getting dressed, and she looks over and Shauna's not there. She checks the wire of Shauna's bra, and it's missing, and immediately Ty starts to panic. She runs downstairs and asks Lottie, "Hey, do you know where Shauna is?" But Lottie has a question for Ty, because in the middle of the night, Lottie got a really weird feeling, and when she went outside, she saw Taissa eating dirt, legitimately shoveling it into her mouth. So she asked Ty, "Were you outside eating dirt?" thinking it may have been just a figment of her imagination. After all, that's what the deer was earlier. But Ty scoffs at it, saying, "No, of course not. Lottie, I don't have time right now to deal with crazy," and goes hunting in the woods to try to find Shauna. And that line really sticks with Lottie. Crazy. She goes and talks to Laura Lee about what may be going on with her. Laura Lee tells her, "I was taught that visions are God's way of communicating through people. They could either be a warning or a revelation." The issue for Lottie is she still doesn't know what these visions mean. And Laura Lee tells her, if you accept Jesus in your heart, he'll help you discern between what is true and what is not. But there's only one way to do that, and it's to get baptized. So Laura Lee and Lottie head down to the water, and Laura Lee baptizes Lottie. When she dunks her head into the lake, Lottie once again has a vision. It's one where she is in a dark and damp hallway. Looks like the basement of a building, and she sees that deer. When she follows it, there's a staircase full of candles. When she makes her way to the top, there is one center candle that is not lit. And when Lottie lights it, that candle shines real bright. She bursts through the water and starts telling Laura Lee, "I saw fire and I saw light." And Laura Lee is convinced that she was touched by the Holy Spirit. As Lottie is getting baptized, Ty went searching for Shauna, and she finds her. And her fears are true. Shauna was about to perform an abortion on herself, which is extremely dangerous. Ty tells her, "You're not going to do this. I'll do it for you." And Ty starts trying to go through with it, but luckily for everybody involved, including the audience, Shauna cannot go through with it. It's too painful, and she starts crying into Taissa's arms, "I don't want to die." Everybody heads back to camp, where good news has finally arrived. As Travis and Natalie were once again making out in the wreckage of the plane, they almost had sex. At least the conversation came up when a condom fell out of Travis's pocket. That led into how many guys has Natalie been with. She got offended at first, but reveals she's only been with 2. Travis is a virgin. They once again go back to making out, but that's when Travis sees a deer. It completely changed their plans, and they end up killing it. When they return to camp, they're welcomed back with applause. But Lottie and the rest of the girls notice that the deer is shedding its antlers, just like Lottie's vision. Ben reassures all the girls that's normal. It happens every year. But when Shauna cuts the deer open, it's full of maggots. And that part is not normal. Lottie turns to Laura Lee and says, "Am I crazy?" And Laura Lee reassures her, "No, you're not. You have a gift." This, though, is the final straw for Ty. She announces to everybody that in the morning, she's going and searching for help. If anybody wants to come with her, they're more than welcome. But she is leaving first thing in the morning. Now, present-day Taissa, along with Natalie, are waiting for Shauna to show up to show her exactly what they've uncovered about Travis's death. Well, shortly after showing her the evidence, they also show her a postcard. And the thing is, Shauna hasn't gotten one. They start discussing who might know about it, and when Natalie brings up Jessica Roberts, Shauna looks at Taissa and says, I told you to take care of her. And Taissa lies to him, saying, I threatened a lawsuit. I told her to back off. But Natalie is done questioning things. She tells the group, I'm going to bring Jessica Roberts to us. And she picks up her phone and starts to dial the number that Jessica Roberts gave her. Luckily for Taissa, both Taissa and Shauna encourage Natalie to put the phone down. The best idea they come up with is getting the $50,000, waiting for the drop, and then putting it there and just seeing who picks it up. And I'll once again remind everybody that this is all being watched by Misty. It's the same Misty who, the next day as she's leaving work, leaves with a bunch of pills that she clearly stole. The next day, all Shauna can think about is this postcard that she didn't get, why she didn't get it, what it means, who it's from, and that's when Jeff walks in and reminds her that they have brunch with Jackie's parents because that day would have been Jackie's birthday. Shauna completely forgot about it, but it's something they do every year, so they two head off to go have brunch with Jackie's parents. And it's awkward. Jackie's mom continues to act like Jackie is alive, even giving out gifts, but also giving little jabs at Shauna, not realizing she's doing it, like bringing up how perfect Jackie was and how smart she was, even though Shauna got into Brown. They even bring up how Jeff is the only person contributing to the household monetarily, and they want to help out with Callie's college fund, but Shauna tells them that's not necessary. We have it covered, even though they don't. Eventually, Shauna gets up and needs to leave the room. She walks up to Jackie's old bedroom, which is in the same exact condition it was when Jackie flew off for nationals. She picks up Jackie's diary, starts flipping through it, and she starts getting flashbacks of her and Jackie discussing Jackie going out with Jeff. Suddenly, though, teenage Shauna disappears, and it's just Jackie sitting there. And Jackie says, you know it's not your fault, right? And Shauna says, yeah, I know. And teenage Jackie says, what? Actually, you don't know. It's totally your fault. But we were kids, and it was awful. This conversation between Shauna and Ghost Jackie gets interrupted when Jeff comes up and goes, you left me down there by myself. So the two head back down and continue having awkward brunch. When Jackie's mom once again brings up how difficult it must have been for Shauna to be in Jackie's perfect spotlight, Jeff has heard enough. He tells Jackie's parents, me and Shauna were sleeping together when me and Jackie were together. It wasn't the right thing to do, but it's a fact. And yes, Jackie was great, but so is my wife. On the ride home, Jeff doubles down on what he said, telling Shauna, I don't wish I married Jackie. I mean, it's not like I've never thought about it, but no, because we've made a life together. And no, it's not perfect. It's probably not what either of us thought it was going to be, but I have no regrets. I mean, how we started out wasn't our finest moment, but Jackie was going to break up with me anyway. I was a high school boyfriend, and to Jackie, that's all I was ever going to be. But you and me, we're still together. You can tell this conversation really means a lot to Shauna. However, later that night, Shauna is sitting in the dark, and she checks her text messages for the first time. Adam was blowing up her phone pretty good, saying he missed her, and then sending her a picture of clothes on the ground. After this heart-to-heart with Jeff, doesn't really seem like Shauna's all that interested in talking to Adam. That is until Jeff says he has to go into work late. And that kind of reminds Shauna about Jeff's affair. So she texts Adam back, take all your clothes off, lay down, and in 45 minutes maybe I'll be there, or maybe I won't. Over with Taissa, her home life isn't great ever since she doubled down on the campaign. Simone has no time for Taissa's games. She tells her, I made an appointment with Sammy and a child psychologist at 3 o'clock, and you're going. So at 3 o'clock, Simone, Taissa, and Sammy go and meet with that child psychologist. Child psychologist basically says, I need more sessions to see what's up with them. But the one big issue is, Sammy doesn't remember any of the things that they accused him of. He has no recollection of doing any of it. Ty, however, isn't putting a lot of stock into the child psychologist, and that pisses off Simone even more. The two start arguing, and it gets to the point where, because Taissa is so distracted, she almost hits a cyclist. On top of that, she's having trouble getting the $50,000. She has a joint bank account with Simone, but she can't withdraw that money without Simone's okay. And this isn't the best time to ask for it. So now it's basically up to Natalie. Natalie can get the money, she's just going to have to sell her Porsche. And as she walks to her car, Kevin rolls up with lunch. Natalie tells him, I have plans, but do me a favor, follow me. I need a ride. And after she sells the car, Kevin tells her, hey, my ex called and there's something I got to do. I could drop you back off, or you could come hang out. And that's something that he has to do, is go watch his son's soccer game. which Natalie's all for. During the game, Kevin's son, Mason, comes over, and Kevin introduces Mason to Natalie, saying, "I've known her since I was about your age." Natalie here won states. Mason starts asking if she went to nationals, and they don't really want to get into that backstory, so Kevin shuts that down pretty quickly. But Natalie does give Mason some advice on the soccer pitch, which does help him score the game-winning goal. After the game, Mason goes and hangs out with friends, which means that Natalie and Kevin are free to do adult things. And that's exactly what they do. They head back to Natalie's motel that she's staying at, and they start getting it on. All the while, they are unknowingly being watched by Misty, who is muddling up some of those drugs for a concoction. And she's planning to use it on Jessica Roberts, who she calls up and says, "I'm ready to talk." Jessica gives her a location, and Misty waits there in her car. Jessica opens the door and sits down, and as soon as she does, Misty stabs her with the drugs. It knocks Jessica out right away. Misty drives her back to her place, ties her up on a bed in a basement, with plans of extracting some information out of her later on. But in the middle of the night, Natalie gets a text message from that unknown number saying, "Drop the money off at 2 a.m. Taissa gets the same text message, although when she gets it, she is outside near a tree with dirt all over her hands, and her hand is pretty chewed up. She's in a trance-like state. It's obvious that the woman in the tree that Sammy talks about is Taissa, but she just doesn't remember any of it. When her phone buzzes, it snaps her out of it, but she has no idea how she got outside or why her hand is so chewed up. All she knows is the drop is going down in about 2 hours. In episode 7, when Taissa wakes up the next morning, her mind isn't changed. She's planning on leaving. She makes her case to the group. The people that are against it make their case on why she shouldn't, but in the end, nothing's changed. She's leaving. At first, it looks like she's going to go by herself, but when she actually does head out, you've got a group of Taissa, Akila, Mari, Van, and Misty. Everybody else stays back at the cabin. Right before the girls do leave, Lottie walks up to Van and gives her a necklace that she made from a bone that she found on the deer that was sick that the group burned. But this bone didn't burn. It looks perfectly preserved. And Lottie looks like she knew exactly where to look to get it. Lottie had a dream the previous night where there was red smoke and a river of blood. She has no idea what it means, but she thinks that by giving Van the necklace, it'll keep her safe. She would have told Taissa, but Taissa's not going to believe her. Now, back with the group that stayed, part of that group that stays back is Jackie and Shauna. Jackie knows that Shauna's hiding something. When she asks her about it, Shauna just at first says, "No, it's nothing." But that's a trend with Shauna, hiding secrets. Jackie knows it since she is her best friend. Jackie says, "I've seen you whispering in Taissa for weeks. Are you really going to keep secrets from me out here? Spill it. What did I do? When did you stop wanting me to be your best friend?" And that statement is enough to get Shauna to tell her she's pregnant. Although when it comes to whose baby it is, Shauna doesn't go that far. She tells her that it's a guy named Randy's. They head out to a secluded area, and Jackie says, "Tell me everything." But right off the bat, Shauna's story starts to kind of unravel. Jackie eventually asks her, "What are you going to do?" And Shauna says, "Honestly, I have no idea." As those two were discussing Shauna losing her virginity, Travis was actually trying to lose his virginity. Now with half the group gone, Natalie and him have a lot more time to get to know each other. Although when it comes time to actually do it, it seems like he gets a little too excited a little too quickly. Just from experience, I know that face. I'm used to disappointing women. When Travis leaves the room, he is still a virgin. The next morning, after brushing her teeth, Shauna returns to the cabin. But when she takes the ladder upstairs to the attic, she finds Javi snooping in her stuff. He tells her that he's looking for the hunting knife for an art project. And Shauna gives it to him, but there's a bigger concern. Her diary. She's written everything in there. And if word starts to trickle out that it's not Randy's baby, but Jeff's baby, that could be a big problem. So she hides it. When it comes time for Shauna to go to bed, she sees what Javi was talking about. He took the hunting knife and he carved a little wolf for her. But as she is going to bed, her best friend, Jackie, is doing some late night reading of her diary. With Shauna's story not really checking out, Jackie could tell she was once again lying. So she went to the source material. She found where Jackie was hiding her diary, and she is learning the cold, hard truth. But over with the other group, the first day out in the wilderness looks okay at first, until they finally make camp. As Van is telling them the plot line for the Sandra Bullock movie While You Were Sleeping, which is an absolute classic, can't suggest it enough, they hear wolves, and it spooks all of them. Taissa tries to reassure the group that they have nothing to worry about, but just in case, they can take turns keeping watch to make sure they're not attacked in the middle of the night. And they're not. The next day, though, proves to be a bigger challenge. They're tired, they're hungry, and when it comes to a water source, they don't really have one. Because the little creek that they find, well, there's something wrong with that water. Now, Van had told all the girls about Lottie's dream. So when they find this dirty river, one of the girls asks, didn't Lottie's dream say something about a river of blood? Taissa, the eternal skeptic, says, yeah, okay, well, last night I dreamt that I was water skiing with Princess Diana. Come on, guys, there's a logical explanation for this. And the one that they come up with via Misty is that there are minerals in the river that must have turned it a dark color and made it smell weird. Either way, they can't drink it. They got to keep moving. But when they go to leave, Mari checks the compass and it's going nuts. Ty tries to once again chalk it up to the minerals in the water, but they're all kind of freaked out about this. Mari even brings up going back, and Taissa tells her, you can go back if you want. It's that way. I'm going to get help. Vanessa is also a skeptic. She says, come on, Ty. It's a pretty big coincidence that Lottie dreamed about this stream. And don't forget what Lottie said when we found the plane. It didn't want him to leave. Taissa cuts her off, yells at all the girls for being ridiculous, and once again reminds them that they can leave if they want to, which kind of bullies them into staying with her. When the girls make camp, all of them are pretty fed up with Taissa at that point. They're hungry, they're cold, they're scared, and Taissa keeps telling them that everything's okay. Van offers to take the first watch, but Taissa, who can kind of feel the tension coming at her, says, no, you guys sleep. I'll take the first watch. Problem is, Taissa goes into one of those trance-like states, and she wakes up in a tree, holding a flare gun and Vanessa's necklace that Lottie made for her. She has no idea how she got there, why she's holding those items, but she doesn't really have time to come up with a logical answer because then she hears screaming. Her teammates are being attacked by wolves. Akila, Mari, and Misty are holding them at bay with torches. Van, though, didn't get so lucky. She's being dragged by one. Ty goes to save her, shooting one of the flare guns, which chalks up to Lottie's red smoke, until finally bludgeoning the wolf to death. Unfortunately, she's too late. When she checks on Van, her face has been chewed off, and she's dead. Modern day Ty is standing next to a tree. She's not in it, so she has made personal growth. But we're actually going to start out with Misty, who is keeping Jessica Roberts as a prisoner while she creepily watches Kevin sleep. Misty goes downstairs to extract some information from Jessica Roberts, mainly why she's doing what she's doing. Because Misty thinks that Jessica Roberts is the one who's behind these postcards. She accuses Jessica of blackmail, even murdering Travis and the symbol. But the only information that Jessica gives her is the fact that she was hired by Taissa to check up on all of the survivors and see if they would talk. She does tell Misty, though, you might not be sure Travis was murdered, but I am. When Misty asks how, Jessica tells her, no, that's my leverage. Let me go and I'll tell you everything I know, because actually, Misty, we're on the same side. Misty walks over to Jessica, slaps her in the face and says, you're wrong. You only have leverage if I'm not willing to make you talk. So I'm here to tell you, you have no leverage at all. Misty goes upstairs and comes back with a box of chocolates and drugs. She tells Jessica the drugs are fentanyl, and she starts injecting the chocolate with the fentanyl. As she's injecting every single piece, Misty starts telling Jessica everything she knows about Jessica's father, who apparently loves chocolate. If Jessica doesn't talk, Misty's going to send her father this box of chocolates saying that it was Jessica, and it's going to end up killing him. This forces Jessica's hand, and she tells Misty that she was at Travis's house before he was killed, but he wouldn't talk to her. After that, she went home, but after she heard that Travis was killed, she got suspicious. When she looked into it, she found out that Travis's bank account was closed right after he died. She figures that whoever closed out that bank account was the one who murdered Travis. But obviously, it also proves that Travis was murdered because a dead guy can't close out his own bank account. While Misty was getting this information out of Jessica, the other 3 remaining Yellowjackets were busy meeting up. When Taissa wakes up outside, she quickly realizes she has to clean up before meeting with Shauna and Natalie. She scrubs all the dirt off of her hands, brushes the dirt out of her teeth, and then puts a bandage on her hand. When the girls meet up, everyone's kind of stressed out. Natalie has the money, but 50 grand doesn't take up nearly as much space as Shauna thought it would. It forces her to stuff the bag with other junk to put the tracer in. They then drive to the location of the drop. Natalie gets out and puts the money where they were instructed. As Natalie is doing that, Taissa and Shauna are having a conversation about just how hard everything's been on Natalie. Shauna doesn't approve when she finds out that Taissa once again paid for rehab, But Ty says, come on, Shauna, think about it. I have Simone and Sammy. You have Jeff and Callie. The only person that Natalie had was Travis, and now he's dead. The fact is, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. So I do what I can for both her and me. Natalie then gets in the car, and the women wait it out, watching the tracking beacon on their phones. And after about 2 hours, the thing still hasn't moved. Women start talking about their relationships. Natalie reveals to both of them that she's sleeping with Kevin, which they both approve of. But then the tracking beacon starts beeping because it's on the move. The women follow it all the way to the unloading dock of a clothing store. Taissa and Shauna are discussing what they're going to do, but Natalie doesn't have time for that. She gets out, grabs the driver of the truck, and puts him at gunpoint, demanding to know why he's blackmailing them and how he knows about the symbol and what they did. But he has no idea what she's talking about. Then the women see that somebody was stowing away in that truck. They have the bag, and they take off running. Taissa throws the keys to Shauna and says, meet us around front, and both Natalie and Ty take off trying to catch this guy. He's doing a pretty good job of evading him until he's caught by Taissa. She tackles him to the ground, he elbows her in the face and is able to get away, but not before knocking into a whole lot of glitter. When Ty and Natalie reach the front of the store, it's just enough time to see this guy driving away. Natalie pulls out the gun, which, oh by the way, isn't hers, it's Kevin's, and it looks like she's about to fire a shot. Taissa grabs her and the gun goes off, but the bullet just ricochets. Shauna shows up 30, 40 seconds late, and after scolding Natalie about what the hell she was thinking bringing a gun, they realize just how much trouble they're truly in because the guy ditched everything in the bag except for the money. The only clue they do have is to look for a guy in glitter, which isn't really much of a hint at all. As they're driving home, tensions are high and they start fighting amongst themselves. Ty says, at least we know it's a man, but Shauna says, no, we don't. They could be working with someone. They could be working with that reporter. And the only thing Ty says is, yeah, also, they know we're on to him. She still has yet to admit to her friends that she hired Jessica. When Ty asks the question, what if they spill our secrets just to spite us? Natalie says, I'm not going to let that happen. She demands that Shauna pull over the car. Right before she gets out of the car, she starts screaming at both ladies, this is for Travis. He was murdered. He wouldn't kill himself. Shauna then drives Taissa home, but when Shauna gets home, somebody's waiting for her. It's Adam. Shauna's pretty pissed off about this, because what if Jeff were home? The thing is, Jeff isn't home, and neither is Callie, and Adam figured that because the driveways were empty. He can't stop thinking about Shauna, and he thinks that maybe they could be a thing, which totally contradicts his attitude before of, I'm just going where the wind takes me, man. Shauna calls him out on this, and then tells him, go home. But he says, no, you feel it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I know that every single cell in your body wants to blow things up and see what happens. That's who you are. And maybe he's onto something because Shauna drags him inside and they bang their little hearts out. The problem is they fall asleep. Jeff comes home. It forces Shauna to have to hide Adam in the closet, where he is narrowly caught by Jeff, but when Jeff goes and takes a shower, it allows Adam to sneak out the front door. Over at Natalie's place, Kevin's the first one to wake up, and he notices that something's not right with his gun. When he checks, he's missing a round. And he asks Natalie about it, and she says, yeah, I went to the store. I brought the gun just for protection. I was in the park. It kind of accidentally went off. But he's pissed off because he has to account for every single round that was fired. When he starts asking Natalie where it went off in the park, can she show him? She says, no, I don't really remember. That pisses off Kevin even more. He starts asking if she was onto something, or even worse, if she committed a crime. She gets mad at the accusatory nature of his questioning, until eventually he gets ready to leave and she says, I'm sorry to tell you, we were just screwing. Your whole high school crush on me was really cute, but now it's just pathetic. In episode 8, we'll start out with the aftermath of what happened in Taissa's group. They can't lug around a dead body, so they decide to burn it. Shortly after lighting the fire, though, Van starts moving, and they quickly realize that she's not actually dead. So if you think you were having a bad day, Van just got half her face bitten off by wolves, and her friends tried to burn her. They wrap Van's face in bandages, and they start to head back to the cabin to get help. But back at the cabin, things have gotten awkward for the lovebirds. Natalie suggests to Travis that they go for a walk and try to hunt, but Travis says, nah, you go ahead. You're better at it than me anyway. So she heads off. While looking for animals, she finds Ben reading alone. She starts joking about how the hell he got Misty to go away. But Ben has to make it clear that him and Misty were never like a thing. And Natalie says, yeah, I figured she's not your type. You like guys, right? Ben gets extremely uncomfortable, denies it, and Natalie feels like an idiot at first but says, Coach, it's just, you never look at our boobs. It's weird. That leads Ben to admitting that, yeah, he is gay. But because Ben is gay, she asks questions now about Travis. You find out that the issue with Travis in bed was that he couldn't get it up. Ben assures her, no, Travis is straight, and not only is he straight, he's infatuated with you. I see the way he looks at you. You have nothing to worry about. Believe it or not, that kind of thing can happen. While those two are talking about her quasi-failed relationship, Travis is actually doing the same thing with Jackie. He headed down to the water to check the fishing nets, which were empty. Jackie asks him, where's Natalie? And he tells her that he told her to go hunting alone because he thinks he screwed this whole thing up. Jackie tells him relationships are fake anyway. Whatever he did, she'll get over it. And the fact is, Natalie's standards aren't exactly top level. Travis takes a little bit of offense to this, and Jackie says, no, I wasn't talking about you. You're basically Brad Pitt compared to the scumbag she usually dates. Who's that Bobby guy she was hooking up with? I mean, she missed a week of practice because she was banging him in his van. And that Bobby guy just so happens to be the bully that used to pick on Travis when they were little kids. And Travis hates this guy. So when he finds out that Natalie was hooking up with him, he rushes back to the cabin and demands answers. After all, Natalie did say she only hooked up with 2 guys, and she never once mentioned Bobby. She admits she did hook up with Bobby, but she didn't tell Travis because she was worried that this was going to be the reaction. She says, that was before I even met you, and I had no idea that he bullied you. I made a mistake. But Travis says, yeah, I guess I did too. Travis just can't get over it. Natalie can't believe he can't get over it. And it looks like that tryst lasted about 3 or 4 episodes. It doesn't take Natalie long to figure out who told Travis about Bobby. And she is not happy with Jackie at all. The next day, as everyone's kind of just chilling at the cabin, Misty, Mari, and Akila show up. They went ahead because Van and Ty were just slowing them down. When they get to camp, they're pretty mentally frazzled. Eventually, they do tell everybody what happened and the fact that Ty and Van are still out there. So a search party gets made to go bring them back. When they get back in the woods, though, it's dark. They're having trouble figuring out where exactly they were, but Ty, overhearing some commotion, shoots off a flare gun to indicate where they are located. And when the girls see what happened to Van, they're horrified. They bring her back to the cabin and start stitching her face back up, which is extremely painful. So the mission to go get help didn't work. And the next morning, everybody is awoken by Laura Lee, who tells them that she is going to take the dead guy's plane and fly south, find help, and get everybody out. The gas tank's full, she's been studying the flight manual for weeks, and it's their best option. Initially, the girls are pretty skeptical. Laura Lee points at Van and says she needs serious medical attention. And then Jackie speaks up, saying she's not the only one. Shauna, tell him. And Jackie forces Shauna to tell everybody that she's pregnant. So now you've got 2 people that need medical attention. Ben, being the only adult in the room, tries to tell Laura Lee, you can't go. But Laura Lee calls his bluff, saying, what are you going to do to stop me? And Ben knows the answer is nothing. Everybody then heads out, starts clearing off the plane and making a runway. While doing so, Shauna does ask Jackie, did you really have to tell everybody that I was pregnant? And Jackie says, how could I not? We have a chance to get you and the baby out of here. That's all that matters. It's not really the time to be keeping secrets. She never once tells Shauna that she knows that it's Jeff's baby. When the group clears off enough space for a runway, everybody says their goodbyes to Laura Lee. She gets in with the thought that this is her purpose. She takes off to applause and is even able to get the plane easily into the air. Although I will point out, no one thought to clean off the windshield. It's filthy. All of the girls head to the lake to watch Laura Lee fly off, but Laura Lee doesn't get too far away before her stuffed animal bursts into flames. Laura Lee sadly knows there's really no way to stop it. Jackie's the first one to notice that there's smoke billowing out of the plane, and then all of a sudden the plane explodes in the sky like the Challenger. The girls are in absolute shock, and Lottie seems to take it the hardest. Modern-day Natalie seems to be taking her breakup with Kevin hard. If you want to call it a breakup, I mean, it was really just a fling, but she's going on a little bit of a bender, and she even texts a drug dealer to get her some coke. When the dealer arrives, he gives her the cocaine. But all of this is being watched by Misty. And when Misty sees what Natalie's about to do, she knows she needs to stop her friend from making a mistake. So she leaves Jessica chained up in her basement, and she rushes off to the motel. When Misty bursts through the door, she finds Natalie cutting up lines on a plate. And instead of grabbing the plate and maybe throwing it outside, getting rid of the coke that way, Misty decides to snort the cocaine. and Misty can't snort all those lines, so that's when she decides to brush the cocaine all over the place. She then grabs the rest of the cocaine. They start fighting over that, and that goes everywhere. I mean, it's a real snowstorm. Natalie asks Misty, "What the hell are you doing?" And Misty says, "I couldn't just sit there and watch you ruin your life." And that's when it clicks with Natalie that she was being watched. She takes that owl and smashes it. She finds the recording equipment and starts demanding answers as to why Natalie was spying on her. Misty tells her friends watch out for each other. But Natalie points out they do. They don't do it, though, with hidden cameras. The two get into a pretty big fight, Misty pointing out that she just saved Natalie from relapsing, and she should get a thank you for that, because right now, Misty's really the only friend she has. And then it somehow gets into Travis's case and about how hard Misty's been working to solve it. She tells Natalie that she discovered that Travis's bank account was emptied out after he was killed. Natalie cuts her off, though, and says, "How can I even trust you? You're so full of crap." Misty ends up leaving, and with Natalie having no other leads, that night she does call the bank and try to get the information as to who would have closed out the account. But they don't give it to her because she's not a family member. When she hangs up the phone, she starts throwing things in the room out of rage. But her whole mood changes when she finds some of that cocaine in the carpet. And drug addicts will tell you there's nothing better than carpet cocaine. The next morning, Natalie heads to an NA meeting. She's not doing it, though, for her sobriety. She's doing it because she knows somebody there. And after the meeting, she runs into that person, and that person is not happy to see her. It's her old sponsor, Susie. The two had a huge falling out about 10 years ago. Natalie is able to convince Susie to go out to coffee with her, though. After all, AA and NA are all about second chances. Natalie tells Susie exactly what happened to Travis and how he was murdered, but his bank account was emptied out the next day. She needs to find out who emptied that bank account out. And the thing about Susie is she's a manager at the bank. She can get that information. But she tells Natalie, "I can't help you out. You're not family." Doing something like that could cost her her job. Natalie figured she might say something like that, so she blackmails her because Natalie and Susie used to work together. Susie selling customers' account information to scumbags in the black market to feed her habit. Natalie tells Susie that unless Susie helps her, she's going to call the bank and tell her what she was doing back in the day. The bank can handle this two ways. They could be appalled and fire her, or they could look at her personal growth. Susie can't take that risk. So she curses Natalie out, but it appears that she will indeed get her the bank information that she needs. Over at Shauna's place, when she finally leaves the bedroom, she surprisingly finds Callie at the table. Callie had come back from her friend's place to change, and that's when she found something interesting by the couch. It was Adam's ID. She is mortified that her mother is now bringing this guy into their house under Jeff's nose. Shauna does feel horrible about the situation, but also points out to Callie, "I can't win with you. I mean, when I was turning a blind eye to what your dad was doing, I was the bad guy. Now that I do something in response, I'm even worse. I mean, don't get me wrong, this isn't my proudest moment, but come on." Callie is disgusted at Shauna's behavior, but she's also concerned for her mother that she's getting into bed with someone that she doesn't even really know. When Callie Googles Adam's name, nothing pops up. No social media, nothing on Google. She's concerned that this Adam guy is into her mom just because of the Yellowjackets lore. That he'll be able to seduce Shauna into telling him all the secrets that Shauna knows about what they did out there and then selling it for a book deal or for a movie or to a news publication or something. Shauna, though, reassures Callie he's into me for me, but Callie isn't so sure about that. When Callie leaves, it gives Shauna a little bit of time to think about that. She does realize there isn't a whole lot she knows about Adam. The only thing she does know is that he went to a prestigious art school, so she decides to call that up and see if she can get his transcripts, but they have no record of him ever being a student. She gets off the phone just in enough time for Jeff to walk in and surprise her with a gift. It's a yellow dress, and he's very proud of himself. He thinks he hit a home run with this purchase. She's not really feeling it, but he did it because there's a reunion the next day for the homecoming court. Jeff was homecoming king, and Shauna married into that. Homecoming, though, is the last thing on Shauna's mind. That night, as the family is having a very awkward, silent dinner, there's a knock at the door. Shauna thinks that it might be Adam, and when she opens the door, she's surprised to see that it's not Adam at all. It's Thaisa. Thaisa tells Jeff and Shauna that she was canvassing the area, and she remembered that she lived there. Both women have to act like they weren't just with each other a few hours ago to Jeff. They go for a walk where Ty tells Shauna that she's sleepwalking again. Her bigger concern, though, is the fact that Biscuit, the family dog, is missing. She figures that she must have let him out while she was sleepwalking. She's really concerned that she's screwing Sammy up because Sammy really loved Biscuit, but the bigger concern is the fact that Sammy has seen Ty sleepwalk. And the fact that Sammy thinks there's another version of Taissa, a version that he calls the bad one, is really upsetting Ty. She confides to Shauna that she's afraid to go to sleep. She has no idea how bad it could get if she sleepwalks again. And she's telling Shauna all this because Shauna knows how bad it truly can get. Shauna offers Ty Callie's bed because Callie's not sleeping there that night. Ty doesn't want to go back home because she's scared of what she might do. That gesture means a lot to Ty, and she gives Shauna a big hug. As they're making Callie's bed, the two women start talking about what their lives would have been like had they not been in the plane crash. Shauna's would have been drastically different. The life that Taissa says literally happened for her. The issue for Ty is, she did all that, but it didn't really make her feel any better. They continue to chit-chat, and eventually Shauna opens up to Ty that she's having an affair. They start talking about how Adam makes Shauna feel, and that segues into how Simone and Taissa's relationship is okay, but it did kind of lose its spark. Ty ends up getting a pretty good night's sleep, and when she returns home the next day, she sees Simone and Sammy making up signs for anybody who might have seen Biscuit. When she gets Simone alone, she tells her about her sleepwalking episodes. They started out right after the plane crash, and after they were rescued, they stopped. She figures that the stress of the campaign popping back up has made the sleepwalking pop back up. She says to Simone, it's happening again, and it scares me, because the last time I did it, She doesn't really finish the sentence, though. She does tell Simone, I think I may have been the one to let Biscuit out of the house. Simone starts to console a crying Taissa. She gets down next to her and says, we will get you the help you need. We can get you a sleep study. We can get you... But Ty cuts her off and says, what I really need you to do is go take Sammy and stay at your mom's house for a little while. Simone is completely against that, saying that they're a family, they don't want to leave her. Until finally, Ty snaps and yells, you can't be here. You don't understand. I'm afraid I'm going to hurt you. Please, just go. And Simone goes, but she's at a loss for words. When Shauna woke up, she headed to Adam's place. He lets her in and he asks, what are you doing here? And she tells him that she realized their relationship was all about one thing, the sex. But she doesn't really know him. She starts quizzing him about where he went to school, who his favorite teacher was. And it becomes evident that this isn't a get-to-know-you kind of quiz. This is an accusatory quiz. It leads Adam to admit that he didn't go to that prestigious art school that he told Shauna he went to. He said that because he wanted to impress her. But that's the only thing he lied about. She starts asking him about brothers, where he grew up, and he answers all of that quickly and confidently. He apologizes to her and says, I've got a friend with a cabin in the woods in the Poconos. Let's go up there for a weekend. You can ask me any question. I'm an open book. Shauna looks at him and says, how exactly do you propose I explain that? And Adam says, I don't care. Just go pack a bag and come back here. So she does, heading home, looking at the dress that Jeff gave her, and then heading into the closet to go pack a bag. And this is the same closet that Adam was hiding in. And she notices that there's glitter all over the carpet. And glitter was all over the guy that extorted $50,000 from them. That's super weird to Shauna. Just to check, she decides to open the safe where she kept her diaries from what went down after the plane crash. And they're missing. There's only one person who would have taken them. So when she returns to Adam's, she doesn't have a bag in her hand. She's got questions. Mainly, who the hell is he? In episode 9, the girls are dealing with the fallout from Laura Lee's plane exploding. On top of that, they're hungry, they have no food, they're miserable, and they've all kind of accepted the fact that they're probably going to die in a few weeks. Because everybody's so miserable, Mari brings in a jar of boysenberries that she was trying to save, but she thinks they might have turned into booze, and everybody could use a drink. Even Ben at this point doesn't really care about underage drinking. Jackie says to everybody, if we have booze, let's have a party. We have dresses, we have everything we need, and after all, it's almost homecoming. So they decide to call this party the Doomscoming, with the idea that they're going to drink rotten berries and celebrate their impending death. Everybody seems on board except Van. So the next day, all the girls start preparing decorations, with Misty making a corsage for Ben. She excitedly asks him if he'll go with her to the dance, and he rolls his eyes, clearly not wanting to go. And Misty starts turning on the waterworks, saying that she's never been asked to a dance, and she figured this would be her one chance to go with somebody. Ben feels so guilty, he says, Misty, I'd be happy to go with you to the dance. And as Misty was guilt-tripping Ben into going with her to the dance, Shauna and Jackie were collecting some items they can use as decorations. But the fact that Jackie knows about Shauna and Jeff and hasn't brought it up has been eating at her a little bit. Jackie starts asking Shauna if she ever thinks about all the things that she didn't do. And Shauna tells her, no, not really. And that's when Jackie brings up the one big thing that she didn't get to do, have sex, because she was waiting for Jeff. Well, she's not waiting anymore. She's decided that she's not going to die a virgin, and she's going to have sex with Travis. Right away, Shauna says, but what about Nat? And Jackie says they broke up weeks ago. He's fair game. So even though Shauna thinks it's a bad idea, Jackie has her mind set on it. Jackie heads back into the cabin and she starts getting ready for the party. One of the things that she's going to do is help Misty with her makeup, and Misty's in desperate need of help with that. But Misty confides in her about her problems with Ben. She feels like Ben is holding back because of society and rules, and she needs Jackie's help with having Ben let go. Jackie tells her that her mother always said when a girl sets her mind to things, there's nothing she can't get from a man. Which, as a man, I will tell you is pretty good advice. The advice that Misty's mom always gave her, though, was that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So she tries that first. She goes out where she's stored a bunch of magic mushrooms. She's planning on once again drugging Ben. Misty walks back into the cabin, and Mari asks her, can you go help Shauna with her dress? Because Shauna's probably 5 months pregnant at this point, and those dresses aren't fitting like they used to. Misty says, sure, and puts down the mushrooms, but when she comes back downstairs, the mushrooms are gone. Mari found them and threw them in the stew that she was making for the party. Misty, never once correcting her and pointing out that they're magic mushrooms. She probably figured that Ben's going to eat them anyway, so mission accomplished. But Misty and Ben aren't the only couple that'll be attending this party. Ty is still planning on going with Van, but Van is self-conscious. Ty knows that, so she makes them matching masks. The gesture really means a lot to Van, and not only are they going to go, but they're going to end up being Doom's coming king and queen. Or queen and queen. Everybody then gets settled into the party. They start eating that mushroom stew. Misty starts looking around, amazed at everybody, realizing that in a few hours, things are about to get pretty crazy, but she's just happy that Ben is eating it as well. But any drug dealer will tell you not to test your own product, and Misty doesn't follow that advice, because she ends up eating the soup too. In fact, the only person that doesn't have any is Jackie. She ain't in the soup. She wants that meat, that man meat. And as all the girls belt out an absolute banger, Seal's kissed by a rose, Jackie goes and gets her meat. She lures Travis away from Nat, and at first they slow dance, but then they sneak off. They make their way to the cabin, upstairs to the attic, and Jackie makes the first move on Travis, but he pulls away and says, wait, what about Nat? Jackie says, what about her? And Travis reveals that he thinks he's in love with her. Jackie starts telling Travis how love doesn't matter. She used to think it, but after she found out that Shauna was having sex with Jeff, she realized that friendship and love don't even matter. So after this impassioned speech, Travis buys into this logic, and he takes Jackie's virginity with the sudden ability to get it up. Outside, things are starting to get weird. The first people to realize it are Natalie and Ben. They snuck off because Natalie actually had some legitimate alcohol, and that's exactly what Ben needed. They start talking about Natalie's relationship with Travis, and that's when Ben starts feeling it. He tells Natalie, I think Misty drugged me again. But Natalie, who's done mushrooms in the past, says, I think she drugged all of us. And they start absolutely tripping balls. And sure enough, back at the camp, it's hitting everybody at the same time. At one point, Lottie goes over to this hollowed out tree, bends down and says, we won't be hungry much longer. The person who drugged them has only one thing on their mind. Misty wants to get to Ben. She finds Ben along with Natalie talking about both of their relationships and how they might die in the woods and they might never get a chance to tell the people who they love what they really feel about them. But while Ben doesn't have that opportunity, Natalie does. And Ben tells Natalie, you have to go and find Travis. Tell him how you feel. Natalie takes off and Misty replaces her. Misty was listening to that entire conversation and she felt like it was really meant for her. So she jumps on Ben and says, you were so right. She starts trying to kiss him, and finally he says, Misty, I'm gay. I don't love you. I love Paul. Finding out that the guy that you were in love with that also told you that he felt the same way is gay is a tough pill for Misty to swallow. While Ben is coming out to Misty, Natalie was on her way back to find Travis, and that was a whole scene. Because most of the girls were outside tripping when one of them brought up how Jackie went off with Travis to go have sex for the first time. That's when Lottie brought up that they had to stop it because Travis doesn't belong to Jackie. The group links up with Van and Ty, who were having sex in the woods, until finally they make their way to the cabin, where Travis and Jackie were just enjoying some pillow time. The mushrooms haven't quite hit Travis yet. They definitely haven't hit Jackie. She hasn't had any. So they're a little thrown off when the entire group barges in and starts demanding to know what they were doing in the attic. Ty asks Jackie, why would you do this to Natalie? And Travis tries to deny it, but there's blood on Jackie's dress. It's obvious they had sex. Lottie starts to grab at Jackie, and unfortunately for Jackie, that is when the mushrooms start to hit Travis. Jackie's begging Travis to do something, but all he's doing is saying, none of us are here right now. Jackie can't figure out what is wrong with all of them. As far as she's concerned, they're all acting weird. And it gets really weird when Lottie kisses Travis. Jackie looks at Shauna and says, really? You're just going to stand there? So Shauna doesn't stand there. She does something. She grabs Travis and starts kissing him as well. Jackie tries to stop her, but Van, Ty, and Lottie get in her way. Lottie tells her, you took something that doesn't belong to you. Jackie shoots back that the spirits don't care that Natalie called dibs on Travis, but Lottie tells her, this has nothing to do with her. Don't you understand? You don't matter anymore. And then she pushes Jackie in the closet and locks her in there. They then put Travis into a chair, and it's every guy's dream. It's orgy time. It's going great. Travis is having a blast. I mean, he just lost his virginity like 15 minutes ago. Now he's checking the orgy off the box. He's having quite a day. Unfortunately, though, he starts to go through a bad trip. The girls who are all up on him are turning into demonic monsters. It freaks him out so bad that he pushes all of them off of him and runs out of the cabin. But when he does that, all of the girls see a stag run out of the cabin, and they chase after him. They end up eventually getting him, tying him to that hollowed-out tree, sticking a pine cone in his mouth, and then Lottie hands the knife off to Shauna to do what she does best, cut throats. She gets really close to doing that. But Travis's head starts going from that deer to Travis, which gives her pause. And that's when Travis is saved by Natalie and Jackie. Natalie went back to the cabin and found Jackie trapped in the closet, let her out, and that's when they found this disturbing scene where they're able to stop it. Natalie tries to check on Travis, but Travis says, I'm fine, and runs off into the woods. He's clearly not fine, by the way. He is definitely frazzled by this whole situation. Lottie grabs Nat's arm and says, it's in all of us, you know, even him and even you. And Nat just throws her down on the ground. She has had enough. She starts screaming at Lottie, I've had enough of your crazy crap. Haven't you done enough? But Lottie just starts doing this maniacal laugh. Natalie then runs back into the woods to try to find Travis. Present day, we'll start off with Shauna, who barges into Adam's apartment demanding answers, but he doesn't really have any. He's totally taken off guard. She starts looking all over the place for the money, her journals, all the while demanding that he tell her who he is. She keeps creeping and creeping until she doesn't find her journals or the money, but what she does find are old magazine covers about the plane crash. And it hits Shauna that he's an Uber fan. She is so incredibly hurt, and she even thinks she figured out how Adam knew the passcode to the safe, because the passcode was her flight number. Adam starts trying to explain his side of the story, but Shauna grabs a knife to keep him away. When Adam walks towards her, she stabs him, killing him on the spot. She goes back home to put the knife in the safe, but when she opens it up, her journals are back. Jeff just walked in the room and she asks him, do you have any idea where this glitter came from? Jeff is a super bad liar. He also doesn't really know what to say. He's been caught. And Shauna is disgusted that Jeff would blackmail her friends. But now it makes sense to her why she didn't get a postcard. He starts telling her, you were never supposed to get involved in this. Whole thing got out of control. There's a furniture website that's running me out of business. I needed the money, and I thought with Thaisa and her campaign, she would have it. Maybe even Natalie had some cash, but I was going to lose the store. It's even worse than that, though. He goes on to explain that he borrowed money from loan sharks, and he had to pay them back. That's why he needed the money. Right now, they're all good. But Shauna says, no, Jeff, we're not all good. She tells Jeff that she killed a guy. And that's even more tough to comprehend for Jeff than Shauna finding out that Jeff was the blackmailer. When he comes back to his senses, he starts asking her, who was this guy? And she has to come clean that it was the guy she got into a car accident with. He finds it weird that she kept in touch with him. And she says, come on, man. I ran into him again when I was following you to the hotel. I mean, we both know that you were having an affair too. I saw you at the hotel with Bianca. But Jeff shakes his head and says, no, I wasn't having an affair with Bianca. She's part of the loan shark crew. I was there to give her her payment. Then he realizes just what Shauna said. You were having an affair too, which means that she had an affair with Adam. He's really having a tough time taking this all in. But the hardest thing for him to comprehend is the fact that there was no book club. That just floors him. A little while later, after they both blew off some steam, Jeff comes downstairs and hands her a card of the guy he has who handles the finances for the store, because Jeff has decided he's going to take the fall. He's watched enough Dateline episodes to know how this ends for him, so he might as well get it over with. Save Shauna and save Callie. He's going to go to the police and own it. Say that he caught his wife and her lover and decided to go track him down and kill him. But Shauna thanks him for the gesture, but says, no, you can't. If word gets out that the Yellowjackets were being blackmailed for the stuff that we did out there, our lives, Callie's life, would be over. They start trying to think about what they're going to do, and Jeff points out that Shauna believed that Adam was blackmailing her. So why can't Natalie and Taissa believe it too? Jeff goes upstairs, grabs a duffel bag, grabs the burner phone, and brings it downstairs so Shauna can take it back to Adams and recreate the scene. He does bring up the fact that he did read her journals years ago. He knows about everything that happened out there. He tells her, you could have talked to me about this, but she points out it's not exactly an easy topic to talk about. Even after all the crap that they've been to and they revealed that day, Jeff vows to stand by Shauna because in the end, he does love her. She then texts both Taissa and Natalie to meet her over at Adams. And Taissa's had quite a day. She's not in a good mood. It's voting day and she's convinced she's going to lose. And now she's realizing just how much this campaign has taken from her and the family. But she gets a text from Shauna along with Natalie. When they show up, the story that Shauna rolls with is Adam was her lover who weaseled his way into her life, stole her journals, and used the information in the journals to blackmail them. After wondering where the money is and realizing that's not there, the next thing they have to figure out is what to do about the dead body. Natalie has one idea. It's to go and grab Misty. And Misty has gotten pretty close with Jessica Roberts. They've actually formed a bit of a friendship. Jessica trying to convince Misty that she should sell her story to a book deal or a movie or something. She starts planting the seed that the girls never really reached out to Misty to see how she was doing about it. Yeah, they all stayed in touch, but they never stayed in touch with Misty. By the time that Natalie shows up at Misty's house, she's starting to believe what Jessica was saying. But she also can't say no to Natalie. In the season finale, everybody wakes up from the previous night outside. When Lottie wakes up, she goes over to that hollowed out tree and she looks disappointed, as if she was supposed to put something there and didn't. But Lottie, Shauna, Mari, and Akilah are pretty far from camp, so they're going to have to make their way back. The guy they tried to kill, Travis, is already back at camp, but he's concerned because Javi's missing. Natalie finds him and wants to know if he's okay, and he says, I'm fine. In fact, I'm great. I got laid. And she tells him, I don't care about that. I literally want to know if you're okay. They almost killed you. He once again tells her that he's fine and says, I'm going to go try to find Javi. When she asks him if he wants help, he says, nope. A little while later, Lottie's group returns, and the first question Shauna has is, where's Jackie? Jackie then comes outside, and she is disgusted in everybody's behavior the previous night. She can't believe what they did. Van tries to throw it back on her because she had sex with Travis, but having sex with somebody and trying to kill them, two very different things, so that's a swing and a miss for Van. Ben tries to calm everybody down, saying that everybody's behavior is justified because of the fact that they were drugged by the mushrooms. And that's something that nobody knew about except Ben. Nobody put two and two together. Akilah turns to Misty and said, you drugged us? And at first she says, well, no, but then she has to admit, not intentionally. She explains that it's all Ben's fault because he made her fall in love with him. The infighting stops as soon as they hear rustling out in the woods, and that's when a bear pops out. But it's like Yogi Bear. It's a friendly bear. It's slow. It's not attacking. It's still a damn bear, though, and it freaks everybody out, so they back up. But Lottie doesn't back up. She actually grabs a knife. She walks up to the bear, and the bear just drops right in front of her. That's when Lottie stabs it and kills it. All the girls are shocked, but they're also thrilled because now they have food. They start going to work, cutting up the bear, preparing it for that night's meal. And Misty tries to help, but Ari tells her, as if we'd ever let you touch our food again, get the hell out of here. Two of the people, though, that aren't helping are Van and Ty. Ty is actually watching most of the girls prepare the meal that night when Van comes up to the attic to talk to her. And Van is still wearing that bone necklace that Lottie gave her. Van knows that Ty is pretty dismissive of it. So when Ty says, come on, talk to me, she says, why? So you can get to tell me how dumb I am? And Ty says, no, I don't think you're dumb. I think you went through a traumatic experience and you're trying to deal with it. That's when Vanessa cuts her off and says, I saw something, Ty. It was after it happened, and I don't think I was dead, but I wasn't really alive either. I was like in between. Ty starts trying to make sense of it, saying that her body was in shock, but Van says, no, I know what I saw. I don't know what it meant, but I know I saw something. Something was out there with us. Ty thinks this is pretty ridiculous and starts to kind of laugh off the notion that there's spirits out there with them. But Van says, don't do that. I get that you're scared too, but don't act like you have any clue of what's happening out there. Ty tries to remind her that she doesn't believe in this kind of stuff, but Van says, well, maybe I do. And if that's going to be a problem for you, then just say it. But Ty says, no, not at all, and gives her a big hug and tells her they're good. They then head back downstairs and get ready for dinner. Some of the girls want to wait for Natalie and Travis, but everybody's hungry, and Ben says, I'm pretty sure they've got some stuff to sort out, so they can eat when they get back. As they're about to dig in, Van reminds everybody that Lottie had said the previous night that they weren't going to be hungry for long. And she asks Lottie, how did you know that? And Lottie says, I just felt it. But Jackie completely scoffs at that, saying that Lottie got lucky. Van then asks if maybe everybody should say a prayer. I mean, after all, they did have a bear brought to their doorstep and sacrifice itself for all intents and purposes. So everybody seems to be down with it, except Jackie. Lottie starts putting this makeshift prayer together. All the girls are saying thank you. But Misty has a serious problem with the fact that Jackie won't say thank you. At the end of it, she calls her out on it. And Jackie says, yeah, I'm not going to thank the god of the dirt. At this point, Jackie has kind of had enough. She calls all of them out on their behavior and asks, is this what we do now? We howl at the moon and we have orgies? I mean, what, we're just not going to talk about it? You guys almost killed a guy and somehow I'm the one who did something wrong? When Shauna tells Jackie to calm down, that pisses off Jackie even worse. Jackie continues to go in, but now her target is Shauna, and finally Shauna has enough and yells at Jackie, just shut up. She starts blaming Jackie and her behavior for the situation, and that's when Jackie reveals to the group that Shauna's baby's dad is Jeff, because back home, Jeff was cheating on her with her best friend. Shauna starts hurling insults back about how Jackie is self-centered and a narcissist. Jackie tries to do the same thing, but it doesn't hit quite the same. And eventually, Shauna hurts Jackie so bad that she tries to kick Shauna out. But Shauna says, no, I'm not leaving. If you can't stand to look at me, that sounds like a you problem. Why don't you get out of here? And most of the girls agree with her. There are people like Ty and Ben who say, no, nobody's going outside. But Jackie, in her stubbornness, says, no, don't act like this isn't what you wanted the whole time. I'm leaving. And she heads out. And it's not like she's going to be the only one outside.
Travis and Natalie have been searching for Javi, but he's nowhere to be found.
Travis thought that he'd pop up, but at this point, they've been searching for hours, and he still hasn't shown his face. Even though he didn't want Natalie's help, Natalie has followed him. Travis once again tells Natalie, I don't want your help, but eventually that turns into an apology. He tells Natalie, I never wanted to do that, and that's because I'm in love with you. Natalie gives Travis a big hug, and he cries into her shoulder. But back at the cabin, after a few hours, Shauna still can't believe Jackie is just sitting outside by herself. The good thing for Jackie is she started a fire, albeit a very small one that isn't keeping her warm, and the temperature is starting to really drop. Ty tells Shauna, just go talk to her, but Shauna doesn't. She gets in her bed and she goes to sleep. She does have a dream in the middle of the night where she goes and gets Jackie, bringing her back into the cabin where everybody's waiting for her. But some of the people that are waiting for her are also Laura Lee and the guy who died in the cabin. And the dead guy says, we've been waiting for you. When Shauna wakes up, she is freezing. She looks outside, and it snowed the previous night. That's when she really panics. She runs outside to find Jackie's dead body frozen. Shauna is beside herself as she's shaking the corpse of her best friend. 3 girls, however, don't really seem to care about it. Those 3 girls are Lottie, Misty, and Van.
Because Lottie needed to put something in that hollowed-out tree.
So she cuts out the bear heart, and along with the other 2, goes, places it in there, and then kneels down in front of it. She says something in French, and then says, let the darkness set us free.
Now, present-day Misty is helping Natalie with the body issue.
She has to stop off at work first and grab some cleaning supplies because, as she'll tell Natalie, most killers are caught actually buying cleaning supplies. But as she's leaving, she finds out that one of the residents passed away the previous night. She then heads to her car where Natalie's waiting for her, and the 2 head over to Adam's apartment. When Misty first shows up, Ty and Shauna aren't thrilled to see her. Misty reminds them that the proper reaction should have been, oh, hey, Misty, how are you? Nice to see you. Thanks for stopping by and helping us cover up a murder. And even though they're not happy with Natalie's suggestion, it's a good one because Misty knows exactly what to do. She gives them really good advice, like turning off all their phones, destroying the SIM card in Adam's cell phone. She instructs Shauna to cut up Adam's body because Shauna's best with a knife. And as Shauna and Natalie are doing that, Misty and Ty are going to get rid of the fingerprints. Shauna and Natalie take Adam's body into the bathroom, put it in the bathtub, and as Shauna is cutting it up, Natalie says, "You didn't quite notice that your boyfriend was acting weird after he killed Travis?" Shauna tells Natalie, "He didn't kill Travis. I was with him the night Travis died." And Natalie says, "Well, then he was working with somebody else. That's obvious." And Shauna stops cutting up Adam and says, "Maybe Travis actually killed himself. I know you're looking for this big conspiracy theory, but maybe there isn't one. After what we've been through, it's understandable. I look around the world sometimes and feel like the light has just been ripped out of it. Maybe Travis just couldn't stand to live like that anymore." After maybe an hour, Natalie and Shauna come out of the bathroom with most of his remains. Basically, his arms and his head. His arms and his head, Misty's going to take care of. She has a plan. The torso, she says to drop off in a park. Bury it. If a dog digs it up, who cares? It's a torso. Not like you can figure out exactly who it is. Doing all of this is going to make the girls late for the high school reunion that night. High school reunion, by the way, that Jeff attends and is waiting for his wife to show up. He has no idea why she's late. But she's dropping off the torso as she was instructed. Misty's plan on to get rid of the head and the arms is to stop by the funeral home of that resident who died the previous night. She's tight with the mortician, so she just dumps the stuff off in the casket right before it's cremated. After doing their part, each girl heads home and gets ready to go to the reunion. But they're all having a tough time of dealing with what they just went through. They all pull it together, though, show up, and when they walk in the room, it's like time has stopped. Everybody's eyes are on them. Bad bitch alert. Misty's really pumped to be there. The other three, not so much. At one point, Natalie sneaks out, and there's a trophy case that honors the people that died in the plane crash and her state championship winning team. She's looking over it, looking at the faces, and that's when Kevin walks up. He tells Natalie that he wishes he could remember Travis better, and she says, "You two are a lot alike, actually." She then says the words that are really tough to say for her. He killed himself. He really killed himself. And that's something that Kevin had accepted when he saw the coroner's report. Kevin then gets called away by his date, and he tells Natalie, "Take care of yourself." She returns to the table with all the girls, and they start having shots. The person who orchestrated the reunion gets up there and starts making a speech about what a traumatic experience they all went through, when in reality, it was just the 4 Yellowjackets. She even has a cringe-worthy slideshow prepared with Enya playing. It shows pictures of the soccer team, but it ends with Jackie. And that's because Jackie was the homecoming queen, along with Jeff, who was homecoming king. It's customary for the king to dance with the queen, but since Jackie is dead, that just leaves Shauna. Shauna and Jeff are thrust back in the spotlight, somewhere they don't want to be. And as they're awkwardly slow dancing, Shauna tells Jeff that she took care of the body. The reunion wraps up and everybody then goes home. Misty had a blast. She's even hungover. She wakes up that morning and she tells Jessica all about it. For the first time in maybe ever, Misty felt popular because everybody wanted to talk to them. She says to Jessica, "I realize people really need to hear my story." Misty wants to let Jessica out, but she's hesitant that if she does that, Jessica's just going to go to the cops. And Jessica explains to Misty that she can't do that because her job is a fixer. She does a lot of shady stuff for a lot of shady people, and going to the cops isn't a part of her gig. Misty buys that and lets her go. Right before she leaves, she gives Jessica her purse. Jessica rummages through it, but she doesn't find what she's looking for, her pack of cigarettes. Misty warns her that those things are going to kill you, but Jessica says, "Come on, do me a favor, save me a stop, because you know I'm just going to buy them as soon as I get out of here." So Misty goes in the trash and grabs her cigarettes and gives it back to her. Jessica then leaves Misty's house for the first time in days, gets in her car, and immediately lights one up. But she doesn't get more than a few blocks away before all of a sudden something starts hitting her. She crashes her car into a few trash cans and realizes she's been drugged, and it was from Misty via the cigarettes. That same night, Shauna and Jeff are in a good place. They're sitting on the couch, laughing, watching TV, actually waiting to find out the results of the election for Taissa. Callie walks in and she's shocked to see her parents just having a good time, so they invite her to join them. As soon as she sits down, though, a news story breaks in about a missing artist named Adam, and it's Shauna's Adam. It's awkward because everybody in the house knows about him, but nobody's saying anything. They then just wait for the election results, and that's what Taissa's doing. She's not going to be with Simone, who's stopping by the house later that day with Sammy, and they're going to miss her. It seems like that move was intentional, though, but Simone needs to pick up some of Sammy's toys and some clothes. Taissa explains that she had to be with her team, and that's exactly where she is when she finds out that she defied the odds and beat Phil Bathurst.
She has won the election. And this sly smirk comes over her face. At the time that she's finding out the good news, Simone is walking in the door with Sammy. She heads down to the basement to grab some laundry, but then she notices over in the corner there's red near a grate. Upon further inspection, she realizes it's blood. She opens up the grate, she crawls through it, and there's a whole separate room that she was unaware of. She starts looking at the walls, and then she sees over in the corner that there's a table set up with their dog's decapitated head sitting on it, his heart cut out, and that symbol that was carved in the tree is there as well. And it was all done by Thaisa, and Simone is mortified. The final Yellowjacket spent her night in her motel room. She has truly accepted the fact that Travis killed himself, and she's decided to follow suit. She's getting phone calls, but she's ignoring them. She's laser focused on ending her life. Right before she's about to pull the trigger, though, these three people burst through the door, put a hood over her head, drag her out of the room, and put her in an unmarked van. And the guy who seems to be in charge is wearing a necklace of the symbol that was carved into the tree. And maybe Natalie should have picked up that phone, because it was Susie, warning her that she did look into Travis's bank account and found out that Lottie Matthews emptied it out. She's freaking out, though, because Susie's convinced she's being followed, and she wants to know what the hell Natalie just dragged her into. And that is the end of Season 1 of Yellowjackets. Thank you so much for reaching this part of the recap. Consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. Feel free to write in the comments section your thoughts on Season 1 and your prediction for Season 2. I'm going to be honest with you. I was convinced Adam was Javi, so when Adam died, I was thrown off. If I don't respond, though, I usually do try to ignore the comment section because it's kind of a cesspool. I'm a little bit of a Misty in that sense. I don't like getting bullied, but just know I really do appreciate you guys reaching this part. Oh, and I have merch. Go buy a t-shirt or something.